Chapter 109. The second round of the competition was a bit speechless. Out of the 15 battles, 11 of them ended very quickly. Almost all of them were the top-ranked disciples beating the bottom-ranked disciples. Yi Chen's battle was not included in these 11 battles, but it was not that far off. His opponent was Dong Haohua, who was not weak at all. Unfortunately, it was Yi Chen who had beaten him within 3 to 4 attacks before he had even shown his real power. There were 2 exciting battles in the third round. The first was a duel between the only 2 female disciples among the top 10 inner disciples of the previous term. The other was Xiao Yi against Li Yun. The 2 female disciples were Peach Hand Zhou Ruo and Rainbow Sword Qiu Ruodong. Zhou Ruo was ranked 4th. She was very strong, her slender hands looked like they had no bones, but after being touched by her, Qiu Ruodong, who was ranked 8th, immediately vomited blood and retreated, losing the battle. Xiao Yi and Li Yun's battle was too intense. One of them was ranked 3rd among the top 10 inner disciples last time, the other one was a new rising star. Both of them did not give in to each other, they were fighting fiercely, even the platform was almost destroyed by them. Xiao Ye's defense and attacking power were very scary. Normal sword light could not break through his Zhen Qi protection, one punch could explode the air in front of him, making Li Yun unable to get close to him. As for Li Yun, although he was a new rising star, he was not any weaker than Xiao Yi. He was evenly matched with the 3rd-ranked Xiao Yi. His sword light splitting martial technique was perfect. The hidden sword light made Xiao Yi even more scared. In the end, the head elder thought that it was too long, so he called it a draw. There were also exciting battles in the 4th and 5th round. The outer disciples who were watching were very excited, their blood was boiling. The 6th round, the 3rd battle. Blood Shadowblade Meng Chong against Iron Fan Yi Qing. Last year's 1st and 2nd-ranked disciples are finally fighting. I wonder who is stronger. You idiot! It must be senior brother Meng Chong. The battle has not even started. How do you know? Senior brother Yi Qing's fan art is so amazing, how could he lose? The one who supported Yi Qing was a female inner disciple. The people beside her rolled their eyes, thinking, another love-struck fool. On the stage, Yi Qing opened his iron fan and smiled at Meng Chong. Last year when I fought with you, I was able to last more than 10 rounds, I'm afraid I won't be able to last this year. Meng Chong said, there is no need to belittle yourself. Do you think that I will let down my guard against you? Yi Qing laughed. Come on, I know you definitely have some ultimate moves, and there's an 80% chance you're going to use them against me. Meng Chong still had his eyes on Yi Qing. His opponent had already fused his techniques and actual combat to perfection. He looked beautiful, but not flashy. It would be impossible to defeat him with a single slash. Step by step, Meng Chong walked toward Yi Qing. Just as he was about to take his 10th step, Yi Qing moved. In fact, he had no choice but to move. Otherwise, once his opponent found the most suitable place to attack, there would be no room for him to turn things around. The iron fan fluttered up and down, creating a series of illusory fan shadows that flew towards Meng Chong without any pattern. It was as if a large bag filled with butterflies had been accidentally opened, and all the butterflies had flown out. Break! Meng Chong lowered his body and charged forward, slashing down with his saber. Poochie! This saber strike grabbed the weakest point of the countless fan shadows, breaking through them. The blood-red saber gleam easily slashed towards Yi Qing at an unbelievable speed. This is what a fast saber should be like. Once it moves, it's amazing. I wonder what level that North Snow Quick Saber Lynch has reached. Seeing Meng Chong's saber art, Yi Qing couldn't help but think of Lynch, who he had met in the Northwest auction house. Both of them were famous for their fast saber art. If Meng Chong was already this powerful, then that Lynch would be even more powerful. Shaking his head, Yi Qing knew that he had to work harder. Above Lynch, there were still young Master North Snow and young Master Duanmu, and above him, there was the top young warrior of the Windy Nation, young Master Emerald. Clang! The blood-red saber light was blocked by the iron fan. Yi Qing's body was knocked back by the impact. Good, since you can take my first saber attack, you can definitely take my second and third. Meng Chong was excited. The blood-red saber light crisscrossed in the air, covering Yi Qing like a huge net. Yi Qing tried his best to protect his body with the iron fan. But even so, that horrifying saber light still numbed his entire body and made his blood boil. The seventh saber attack. This saber attack was launched last, but it was faster than the previous few saber lights and cut open Yi Qing's hairband. Yi Qing's long black hair danced in the air as he put away his iron fan. I still can't beat you. Just now, he had already used his ace attack. However, under Meng Chong's saber light, those ace attacks were not as good as his normal attacks. He understood that this was because his ace attacks were not perfect yet. Otherwise, it would not be so easy for Meng Chong to find the flaws in his attacks. However, everything has its pros and cons. After this battle, it would be easier for him to find the flaws in his attack. Meng Chong laughed and said, "Being able to force me to use the seventh saber attack is already very good." Beside Yi Chen, Wu Zongming sighed and said, "I wonder who can beat brother Meng Chong?" After saying this, he glanced at Yi Chen. Yi Chen gave him a mysterious feeling. Even now, he still did not know Yi Chen's real power. Maybe there was a chance. Of course, Wu Zongming was not sure. Let's keep watching. Yi Chen did not make any assumptions. Soon, the sixth round ended. Until now, there were only 5 people who had an undefeated record. They were Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong, Peach Blossom Hand Zhou Ruo, Ghost Sword Li Kuang, Tai Feng and Yi Chen. Although Madman Xiao Yi and Li Yun did not lose, they had a draw after all. They had lost 1 point. After the 7th round, there was one less person who had an undefeated record. It was Peach Blossom Hand Zhou Ruo. He was unlucky and met Iron Fan Yi Qing. After exchanging hundreds of moves, he was defeated by Yi Qing. Although he lost, his power still made the crowd fear him. In the crowd's anticipation, the 8th round began. The first 3 rounds could barely be considered exciting. When it came to the 4th round, the crowd burst into cheers. The contestants on the stage were Yi Chen and Ghost Sword Li Kuang. If it were in the morning, the crowd would definitely not be cheering like this. However, Yi Chen had been winning all the time, and his popularity had skyrocketed. He had gained a lot of supporters, including some of the inner disciples. On the VIP seats, Yi Tianhao and Shen Yuqing's breathing almost stopped. It was not an exaggeration to say that this year's Sky Cloud Martial School's inner disciple ranking competition was one of the most thrilling events in their lives. Every time Yi Chen stepped onto the stage, they would be on tenterhooks for a while, afraid to see Yi Chen fail. Although Yi Chen's results had already made them very satisfied, who wouldn't want their children to do better? Fortunately, up until now they had seen Yi Chen win again and again, and it seemed to be quite easy. But now it was different. Yi Chen's opponent was the mysterious Ghost Sword Li Kuang. Whether he could win or not was still unknown. Chapter 110. I'm afraid brother Yi Chen is in danger. Senior brother Meng Chong and senior brother Li Kuang have always been able to restrain people with powerful movement technique. Senior brother Feng Ping had been defeated by the 2 of them. Unknowingly, everyone had added the word senior brother behind Yi Chen's name. Yes, let's see if brother Yi Chen can block brother Li Kuang's first sword. If he can block the first sword, then he can block the second and third sword. Ghost Sword Li Kuang's sword art was unpredictable. As long as one's strength was slightly weaker, it would be difficult to block his sword. Only when one's strength surpassed the opponent's could one win. On the platform, Li Kuang's eyes were cold, his back was straight like a great sword. 30 steps away from him, Yi Chen looked indifferent and calm. I only need 1 sword to defeat an ordinary person. You are quite strong, you should be able to force me to use my third sword. Li Kuang looked at Yi Chen and said coldly. Yi Chen said, Really? I advise you to go all out. Do you think you can force me to go all out with your strength? Li Kuang's eyes became colder. The two stood 30 steps away from each other. One's eyes were cold while the other looked calm. Everyone's breathing stopped as they stared at the stage without blinking. Buzz. The storage ring emitted a faint light and the hidden cloud sword appeared in Yi Chen's hand. He said lightly, "If you don't go all out, you won't have any chance of winning." Most of the people were stunned. What? Brother Yi Chen uses a sword, just like Brother Li Kuang. This is amazing. Brother Yi Chen didn't take the previous battles seriously at all. A battle between two great swordsmen, just thinking about it makes me excited. Yi Chen suddenly took out his sword. It was a huge shock to the spectators. After all, they knew that without a swordsman's battle power would be greatly reduced. Only with a sword in hand could a swordsman unleash his full strength. On the elder seats, a few elders nodded and laughed. Interesting. With the hidden cloud sword in his hand, Yi Chen's aura changed. His eyes were as sharp as a sword, capable of penetrating people's hearts. A sharp aura was emitted from his body. Li Kuang was slightly surprised. He really didn't expect Yi Chen to be a swordsman. He couldn't be blamed for not seeing through it, it was because he hid it too well. Under normal circumstances, a swordsman with some achievements would have some qualities of the sword, such as sharpness, coldness, and so on. However, Yi Chen's temperament had nothing to do with these, it looked very ordinary. Of course, he didn't know that Yi Chen had already trained his qi hiding spell to a very high level. Not only could he hide his cultivation level, he could also hide his aura, making it hard for people to see through him. Not to mention Li Kuang, even a clasping Yuan realm sword artist might not be able to see through him. Since you are also a swordsman, that's for the best. Defeating a swordsman is undoubtedly more interesting. I hope you can last longer. Li Kuang's slender right hand was placed on the hilt of his sword. Waves of true qi were injected into the sword, ready to deal a fatal blow at any time. Shoo! Li Kuang moved. His whole body was like a sharp sword that was unsheathed, rushing towards Yi Chen at an extreme speed. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the two had shortened to 5 steps. Ecstasy! Only then did Li Kuang pull out his sword. Once the sword was out of the sheath, the twisted black sword light seemed slow but was actually fast. It seemed to move from top to bottom, like a nightmare, making people unable to tell where the opponent was going to attack. Zhang Haoran's face turned pale. He was defeated by this sword. The pain of not being able to use his power and not knowing what to do was still fresh in his memory. Clang! Under the nervous and excited gazes of the crowd, Yi Chen also made his move. The angle of the sword was unimaginable, it was like an antelope's horn, a divine stroke. Not only that, Yi Chen's sword light was very thin, it was the kind of thin that was condensed to the extreme, it was even sharper. Clang! Li Kuang's first sword was blocked, but he didn't care. He was about to make his second sword to suppress his opponent. But what surprised him was that Yi Chen took the initiative to counterattack. Peak of perfection. The lone peak of 13 swords was only a top-rank mortal realm sword art, but in the hands of Yi Chen, it was extremely powerful. A stunning sword light pierced through the air and went straight for Li Kuang's chest. Li Kuang took a step back and slashed out with his black long sword, trying to take back the initiative. Yi Chen's eyes were sharp. He twisted his wrist and the sword light exploded in a very small area, layer upon layer, spreading out towards Li Kuang. What? The incoming sword light gave Li Kuang the feeling of a huge mountain, one after another, attacking his mind. At this moment, Li Kuang stopped underestimating Yi Chen. His body rose from the ground and slashed down. Kacha! 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 When the two sword lights collided, the platform was cut into pieces, and the hard stone pillars at the edge of the platform were cut off. This series of actions happened in the blink of an eye. Many people didn't even see how the two exchanged blows, it was so fast that it was terrifying. Such a thrilling battle, every sword is so dangerous, there is no time to react at all. Senior brother Yi Chen is indeed powerful. He easily blocked Li Kuang's first sword and even took the initiative to counterattack. On the other side, Pei Shaoqing and Qiu Ruodong stood together. Qiu Ruodong said, "Your friend is in danger." Pei Shaoqing smiled confidently, "Don't underestimate Li Kuang. In the past year, his sword arts have been improving rapidly, and if I'm not wrong, he has already mastered the 7th sword of the 9-ghost shadow sword. That sword is enough to defeat 3 Yi Chens, and now he has only used 3 sword moves. But I feel that Yi Chen is also not using his full power." Li Kuang's figure floated back and lightly landed on the ground. He solemnly looked at the distant Yi Chen. "I admit that you're qualified to make me go all out. However, it's still impossible for you to defeat me. I'll let you see my true strength now." Li Kuang took a step forward as a sharp qi flow burst out from his body, pouncing toward Yi Chen with an earth-shattering force. At the same time, the black sword light became extremely frightening, turning the formless qi flow into a dense black color, covering the existence of the sword light. 10,000 ghost soul devour. This time, Li Kuang did not hold back. He knew that the 4th, 5th, and even 6th sword attacks would not be able to do anything to Yi Chen. Only the 7th sword attack would have the confidence to defeat Yi Chen without any resistance. The black airflow swept over along with the sword light, but Yi Chen wasn't afraid. He slightly closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his eyes were like 2 sword lights, tearing through the void. Break! When Yi Chen waved his sword, all the nearby inner disciples who used swords were frightened. For no reason, the swords on their waists trembled, wanting to fly out of their sheaths and merge with Yi Chen's sword aura. No matter how they tried to suppress it, they couldn't stabilize it. Many big shots on the VIP seats exclaimed, "Sword intent! It's actually sword intent, how is this possible?" Chapter 111. In the Windy Nation, only the leader of the North Snow Martial Academy, Shui Wuren, had comprehended the blade intent. As for whether there were other hidden figures, no one knew. Just like the blade intent, the sword intent was also very hard to comprehend. At least until now, no one in the Windy Nation had ever comprehended the sword intent. Among the younger generation, there were only a few people who had a chance. The head disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Hidden Fragrance Sword Zhu Mei, was one of them. However, no one had expected that in an inner disciple ranking competition, there would be a nobody who had comprehended the sword intent that all the sword artists dreamed of. How shocking was that? No, he hasn't comprehended the real sword intent yet, it can only be counted as half-step sword intent. On the VIP seats, a cyan-clothed man said slowly. Next to him, a beautiful young lady in a pink dress looked confused. Half-step sword intent? The cyan-clothed man explained, "I have seen a sword artist who had comprehended the sword intent in the Rudra Nation. That kind of power that could cut through the void was still fresh in my memory. After I came back, I made up my mind that I must comprehend my own sword intent. However, in the past few years, I have only comprehended a little bit of it, but my cultivation has been improving at an amazing speed." The beautiful young lady suddenly understood. No wonder her husband's cultivation was getting more and more profound. It was because he was stimulated by something. However, her husband couldn't comprehend the sword intent no matter how hard he tried, but a 15 or 16-year-old boy had done it. She had to admit that sometimes, a few days of effort from a genius was equivalent to a few years of effort from others. The beautiful young lady was the owner of the Flower Fairy restaurant in the ancient spring town, Flower Fairy. Next to her was her husband, the Blue Cloud sword artist, Shun Lang. Rumble. While the two were talking, a storm was already brewing on the platform. The half-step sword intent was about 3 to 4 meters long. It sliced through the black chi flow and the horrifying black sword light like cutting a piece of tofu. Then, the sword chi, which was only 2/3 smaller, still had some power left on the ground and flashed past Li Kuang's side. In the next second, the rock wall in front of the VIP seats had become soft, and stone powder was falling down. Li Kuang stood on the spot in a daze. Just now, he felt the presence of death. If it wasn't for the opponent being merciful and deliberately deviating from the attack's trajectory, that sword chi would have definitely cut him in half and turned him into a blood mist with no bones left. Puff! Suddenly, Li Kuang spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the sword chi hadn't hurt him, the half-step sword intent contained within it had made his blood boil. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, but he felt much better. Yi Chen is victorious. The administrator who drew lots recovered from his shock and announced loudly. Sheathing the hidden cloud sword, Yi Chen turned around and walked away. In the elder's seating area, the head elder let out a long breath and said, "Although it's only a half-step sword intent, and it's still uncertain whether he can comprehend the real sword intent or not, the success rate is still 10 times or even 100 times higher than the others. He has already comprehended the half-step sword intent at such a young age. His potential is limitless. In the future, he will definitely become one of the 4 pillars of our Sky Cloud Martial School. However, we still need to observe him carefully and test his loyalty." Of course. On the other hand, Yi Tianhao and Shen Yuqing were overjoyed. The Duanmu family had a young master Duanmu, and their Yi family had a genius who had comprehended the half-step sword intent. In the future, they would definitely be able to catch up with the Duanmu family, or even surpass the Duanmu family and become the leader of the top 8 families. The others also sighed in their hearts. After today's fight, Yi Chen had become quite famous. Within a couple of days, his name would spread across the entire Windy Nation. Some people were happy, but some people were hiding their evil intentions. A middle-aged man with a scar on his face, who was wearing a navy blue robe, looked down with a hint of killing intent flashing through his eyes. He thought to himself, "This kid can't be allowed to live. Otherwise, when he grows up, the Sky Cloud Martial School will surpass the Purple Sun Martial School, and even the North Snow Martial Academy and the Emerald Martial Palace. He is a dangerous person." If anyone knew what the middle-aged man was thinking, they would be very surprised, because this man was not a member of the martial school. Instead, he was a solitary martial artist named Zhu Liang. He had been famous for decades, and was now at the peak of the early clasping Yuan realm. However, if the leader of the Purple Sun Martial School knew about this, he would not be surprised. Zhu Liang had been the intelligence elder of the Purple Sun Martial School since a long time ago, and was responsible for collecting all kinds of information in the martial world. At the same time, when the Purple Sun Martial School was inconvenient to deal with, he would take care of it. In the past, Zhu Liang had killed a lot of talented martial artists, and had killed those who could pose a threat to the Purple Sun Martial School. "Yi Chen, you are so dead." Zhu Liang sneered in his heart, but didn't show it on his face. The fight continued, but in the eyes of the audience, the exciting fight had become boring. Not far away, Song Fei glanced at Yi Chen and said to Yi Qing, "It seems that in this year's Wind Cloud Martial School, only he can compete with Meng Chong." Yi Qing said, "The sword chi combined with the half-step sword intent is indeed very powerful, but it is still hard to say if he wants to win against Meng Chong. Of course, both of them are already at the top of the core disciples. The top 10 inner disciples competition is not that important to them. Plus, the Sky Cloud Martial School is just the Sky Cloud Martial School. There are still the other top 4 martial institutions, and outside of the Windy Nation, there are many more powerful martial institutions. Therefore, you have to look at the bigger picture. Being powerful for a short period of time does not mean anything." Song Fei sighed. "Yeah. The top young martial artist of our Windy Nation, the young Master Emerald, is only ranked 68th in the Hidden Dragon rank. Who knows how many geniuses will appear in the next Hidden Dragon rank." The 8th round of the competition soon finished. There were 3 people who had a perfect winning record. They were the Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong, Tai Feng and Yi Chen. There were 5 people who had a perfect winning record. The 9th round, the 9th battle. The Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong against the crazy man Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi grinned and said, "Meng Chong, this time you are going to lose your first place. It is only the half-step sword intent. The true spirit continent is not dominated by warriors who have mastered the sword intent and blade intent. I, Meng Chong, do not need to master the blade intent to win against anyone." Meng Chong did not care if Yi Chen had mastered the half-step sword intent or not. For him, all he wanted to do was to win against his opponents again and again, to push his blade to its limit. After he finished talking, Meng Chong's aura became even more intense. What a good Meng Chong, he did not fall for my provocation at all. Xiao Yi was planning to use Yi Chen to attack Meng Chong and distract him, but it did not work at all. Instead, it increased Meng Chong's aura. However, Meng Chong was right, learning the sword intent was indeed a way to become powerful. However, there were so many ways to become powerful, and the sword art was only one of them. Plus, Yi Chen's foundation was still not that deep, and his cultivation was also one level lower than theirs, so there was no need for him to be afraid. "If that is the case, let's fight," Xiao Yi yelled. He threw out a punch with a thunder-like chi. "Break for me!" Meng Chong started running. The long blade in his hand had already been out of its scabbard. The blood-red blade light sliced towards Xiao Yi along with the chi. Dang! Xiao Yi was indeed worthy of being ranked 3rd in the last Hidden Dragon competition. His power was not weaker than I Ching's, and he was even better at fighting head-on. With only one punch, he had shattered the weakened blade light. The second blade. The blood-red blade light shot up into the sky. It even changed the color of the air. Xiao Yi did not back out. Instead, he drew a half-circle with both of his hands. A millstone-sized ball of chi gathered in front of his chest and clashed with the blade light. Boom! The power spread out in all directions. Xiao Yi backed out 3 steps. A little bit of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. Off the stage, Yi Chen thought to himself, Xiao Yi is even more powerful than the ghost sword Li Kuang, but he could only barely block Meng Chong's second blade attack. It would be really hard to win against him. Chapter 112. The third blade. Meng Chong's long blade flashed in the air. Suddenly, a bright blood-red blade light appeared, bringing with it an unstoppable sharpness as it slashed towards Xiao Yi. So fast! Xiao Yi could only see a blood-red flash in front of him. The blade light was already 1 meter away from him. At this moment, it was already too late to dodge. Furthermore, that was not his style. If he were to take it head-on, he would definitely vomit blood and retreat. Meng Chong's third blade was not that easy to block. Even the iron fan I Ching could only protect himself from being injured. Roar! Xiao Yi bent his body. A green halo spread out, a huge Zhen Qi arm extended out from his shoulder, a fist clashed with the blade light. The Qi energy formed a circle, and suddenly expanded. Crack, 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 crack. The stone pillars that were far away from each other started to crack. It looked like they would shatter if the wind blew. Meng Chong stopped his attack. He did not attack again. The crowd started to discuss. Brother Xiao Yi actually has a Zhen Qi arm on his shoulder. This is unbelievable. The Zhen Qi arm does not look like a human's, it looks more like a beast's forelimb. You can even vaguely see the scales made of Zhen Qi, and the palm is like a beast's claw, and it is so powerful, it blocked Brother Meng Chong's third blade attack with only 1 punch, and it was not damaged at all. Looks like when Brother Xiao Yi was fighting with Li Yun, he did not use his full power. He must have saved it for Brother Meng Chong. Li Yun's eyes shone, but he did not say anything. Pup! Something even more shocking happened. A Zhen Qi arm extended out from Xiao Ye's left shoulder, but it was green in color, and there were traces of green qi rising from it. It looked like a burning flame. Meng Chong, I have never shown this ancient demon secret art to anyone before. Today you will be the first person to see it. Wiping the blood from his mouth, Xiao Yi looked excited. The ancient demon's secret art was something he found in a ruin by chance. It was divided into 3 parts, the first part, the second part, and the last part. He only had the first part. It was not complete, but it was not weak at all. It was comparable to a low-rank Earth Realm martial skill. Ancient demon's secret art. Yi Chen had never heard of such a martial technique before. Seems like this Xiao Yi had a fortuitous encounter. Meng Chong glanced at the Jinqi arm and said nonchalantly, "I don't care what kind of ancient demon's secret technique you have learned. In my eyes, there are only those who have fallen." "Then go ahead and try." Xiao Yi was already 2 meters tall, with the addition of 2 gigantic Zhen Qi arms on his shoulders. He looked like a giant. An endless pressure spread out from his body. The wind in the plaza seemed to have stopped. What answered him was a series of blood-red saber lights. The saber lights were like crescent moons, and they formed a blood-red wheel that was more than 10 meters tall. The rotating blade aura wheel sliced the air into pieces, rolling towards Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi laughed. He did not retreat. He raised his 2 gigantic Zhen Qi arms and welcomed the attack. Bang 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 bang. The 2 true energy arms raised their fists and punched the blood-red Dharma wheel again and again. Instantly, red and green energy splattered in all directions, creating a very beautiful scene. Break! Meng Chong's body appeared in the blood-red Dharma wheel. His right arm suddenly emitted a ball of blood-red light. The light went into his saber and he waved it. Swoosh! The green Jinqi arm on Xiao Ye's right shoulder was cut off. It flew more than 10 meters away. It turned into pure Yuan Qi and merged with the air. One of senior brother Xiao Ye's Jinqi arm was cut off. Someone shouted. The others did not have time to talk. They were afraid that they would miss something interesting. Xiao Ye's face turned pale. The Jinqi arm was formed by his Jinqi. It consumed a lot of Jinqi. Now that one of it was cut off, the total amount of Jinqi was reduced by 1/3. His blood was boiling. "I'll cut off your other arm." Meng Chong did not stop. He flipped his saber and slashed towards the green Jinqi arm on Xiao Ye's left shoulder. Clang! It was as if the saber had slashed onto a well-tempered steel. It created a lot of colorful sparks. If one looked closely, they would realize that the saber had only cut through half of it. It could not cut through. Xiao Yi forcefully suppressed his boiling qi and blood and Zhen Qi. Both of his arms gathered in the air and pushed out a ball of Zhen Qi bullet that was glowing with a green light. Meng Chong's saber was stuck on the green Zhen Qi arm. He could not pull it out. Seeing the Zhen Qi bullet flying towards his chest, he knew that he could not hold back anymore. He opened his mouth and let out a thunderous shout. Meng Chong clenched his left hand into a fist. Blood-red lightning shot out from between his fingers, crackling loudly. Swoosh! The Zhen Qi bullet was like a punctured balloon. It disappeared into thin air. Yi Chen shook his head. Even this could not do anything to Meng Chong. Xiao Yi was definitely going to lose. But to be able to force Meng Chong to this extent, it was already very commendable. Break! The saber continued to attack. It finally cut off the green Zhen Qi arm, but this green Zhen Qi arm was very strange. When it was cut off, it immediately exploded into countless of green flames. It grew bigger as it touched the wind. It burned everything. Swoosh, swoosh. Meng Chong saw that the situation was not good. His body flew backwards. The platform he was standing on was instantly burned into a glass-like shape. There was blood coming out of his mouth and nose, but Xiao Yi was not too upset. He said, "I lost." The 2 Zhen Qi arms had consumed 2/3 of his Zhen Qi, plus the Zhen Qi bullet from before. There was not much Zhen Qi left in his body. He could not fight against Meng Chong anymore. Letting out a breath, Meng Chong said, "To be able to force me to this extent, you are the first one. Same to you. You still have a battle with Yi Chen. His half-step sword intent is not that simple either. Let's see how you are going to beat him." After saying that, Xiao Yi jumped off the platform. When this battle was over, the other 2 platforms had also finished their battles. The remaining 2 battles were not worth watching. They were all inner disciples with very few points. They would definitely be eliminated, including Zhang Haoran. It was not easy for him to make it this far. Finally, the last round of battles began. When it was the 7th battle, the heavyweight battle started again. This battle was between Yi Chen and Tai Feng. One of them was a genius sword artist who had comprehended the half-step sword intent, while the other one was the representative of a late bloomer. Up until now, both of them had maintained a perfect winning record. No matter which side won, there would be one less person with perfect winning record, and that person would definitely compete with the Blood Shadow Blade, Meng Chong, for the title of the first inner disciple. Many people were thinking about this in their minds. Who was more powerful between Yi Chen and Tai Feng? Judging from the previous battles, it was really hard to tell. Yi Chen's sword chi was indeed powerful, but Tai Feng's leg art was also not to be underestimated. Pei Shaoqing, who was as powerful as the ghost sword Li Kuang, was an example. Plus, no one knew if he had any more powerful skills. Tai Feng smiled and said to Yi Chen, "Thank you for your guidance." "Okay." Yi Chen nodded. To be honest, he was a bit scared of Tai Feng, since he did not have many chances to show his power, so he had to do it himself. Chapter 113. On the stage, the two stood 50 steps away from each other. Perhaps it was because Tai Feng felt that Yi Chen was not easy to deal with. This time, he did not take a passive approach. For the first time, he took the initiative. He slightly lifted his right leg, and a vast force suddenly integrated into his body. Suddenly, the airflow above the square became abnormal, and a fierce wind swept across. On the opposite side, Yi Chen was dressed in a white robe. The hem of his robe was fluttering in the wind like a small boat in a stormy sea. However, when he pulled out the hidden cloud sword halfway, the wind on the square seemed to have been cut into two halves. One half of Tai Feng's side was raging, while the other half of Yi Chen's side was calm. Compared to the huge square, the two of them were so small, like they were floating in the air. However, at this moment, the vast square seemed to be unable to contain the two of them, as if it could collapse at any time. Brother Tai Feng is going to use that kick again. I wonder how Brother Yi Chen is going to block it? Brother Yi Chen's sword chi is invincible. I'm afraid he can cut through Brother Tai Feng's attack with just one sword. I bet that Brother Tai Feng will win 1,000 gold. Do you dare? Why not? I bet that Brother Yi Chen will win 2,000 gold. Me too. Me too. In the spectator seats, some of the outer sect disciples who had different opinions started to gamble with huge sums of money. For them, they could show off their foresight and earn money at the same time, so why not? As for losing, they didn't even think about it. Seeing this scene on the stage, Pei Shaoqing said lightly, "This kick is very powerful. Fighting with it is like fighting against the whole world. It is boundless and endless." So powerful? Qiu Ruodong, who seemed to be very close to Pei Shaoqing, asked in surprise. If it was not so, I would not have lost so easily. There was no way for me to resist at all. Only Meng Chong can break this force. Qiu Ruodong thought that Yi Chen could also do it, but she did not say it out loud. After all, she would find out soon. One kick to move the wind and clouds. A thunderous roar was heard. Tai Feng slightly leaned his upper body back and threw out a kick. He had turned the power of the world into his own and attacked Yi Chen's half of the body. Pop! The calm aura that Yi Chen had created earlier had been broken, and a ferocious airflow swept over with an even more terrifying aura, causing many inner sanctum disciples to lose their footing, and their hearts were filled with shock. Break! Whoosh! In the void, the pure and bright sword chi flashed and disappeared. The momentum was like a deflated balloon, collapsing on itself. Senior Brother Tai Feng's momentum has been broken. Senior Brother Yi Chen is indeed powerful. The eyes of the inner disciples who supported Yi Chen lit up. It seems like the half-step sword intent is more powerful. Senior Brother Yi Chen is really a godly person. One sword and one person, he can even cut through the great momentum. On the VIP seats, the Green Sky Swordsman, Shun Lang, said solemnly, "This kid actually possesses the ability to sever the power of nothingness. I'm afraid he's not far from comprehending the true sword intent." Tai Feng's naive expression disappeared as he stared at Yi Chen with a serious expression. Yi Chen was the first person who had given him endless pressure ever since he had comprehended the general trend. In front of Yi Chen, the so-called general trend could not even withstand a single blow. It seemed like he could only attack with brute force. Changing wind and cloud. Tai Feng's entire body rose up from the ground. All of the general trend had been infused into his leg power, attacking towards Yi Chen one after another. His body was light and agile, and his leg power was as heavy as a mountain. The airflow around Yi Chen's body surged, and when those countless leg powers landed on him, it seemed like the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. Yi Chen was in the middle of it all, but his expression was calm. Without any hesitation, he waved his hidden cloud sword continuously, and within a blink of an eye, he had thrown out dozens of sword attacks. Each sword attack would shoot out a 3-meter-long thick sword chi. The sword chi was so sharp that it seemed like it was going to tear the space in front of it apart. Swoosh, 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 beams of sword chi shot up into the sky, cleanly cutting through the leg power. It was so sharp that no one could stop it. Tai Feng's facial expression suddenly changed. Zhen Qi surged out of his body, and his leg power became even stronger. Wave after wave of Zhen Qi collided with the platform's surface, causing the platform to crack and collapse, and the stone pillars to collapse. Many people had started to support Yi Chen on the way, because Yi Chen's sword attack had been so brilliant, and it had easily broken Tai Feng's momentum. Now, seeing Tai Feng's power, they couldn't help but worry about Yi Chen. No matter how powerful the sword chi was, it was still limited, and how could it fight against the endless momentum? Break. At this critical moment, Yi Chen didn't hold back anymore. The hidden cloud sword seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually moving very fast. The moment the tip of the sword reached its peak, the half-step sword intent burst out. Clang, 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 clang. Caught off guard, the great swords around the inner disciples' waists all flew out of their scabbards and merged with Yi Chen's sword aura. With a sharp aura that was enough to cut through a mountain, the swords rushed towards Tai Feng, who was in the air. Clang! A mountain cracking sound arose. Tai Feng's leg power was broken, and he was sent flying backwards while vomiting blood. What a terrifying sword power! It even took away our swords. In the future, if any sword artist encounters Brother Yi Chen, he or she will be at a disadvantage. The half-step sword intent is too powerful, and the swords won't be under his control. Ji Shuyan came out of the Emerald Martial Palace not long ago, and our Sky Cloud Martial School also has Brother Yi Chen. But unfortunately, none of them can be compared with young Master Emerald. Standing on the ruined platform, Yi Chen waved the hidden cloud sword in his hand. Dozens of swords seemed to be attracted by an invisible force, and they all fell down, neatly inserted into the ground in front of the inner disciples, forming a row. This is mine. And mine. All the inner disciples who used swords walked up and pulled out their own swords. Tai Feng landed on the ground and said in admiration, "That last sword attack was brilliant. I didn't expect the half-step sword intent to be so powerful." Yi Chen smiled lightly. "Your leg power is also very powerful. If it was a little bit more powerful, even I wouldn't be able to defeat you." He, the general trend of Taishu is very mysterious, and I only learned it by chance. I won't be able to make a breakthrough in 1 or 2 years, so I can only try to improve my skills. But you have to be careful of Meng Chong. His blade power is too powerful, even the half-step sword intent seems to be unable to defeat him. Indeed. Yi Chen nodded. In front of absolute power, fancy skills were useless. His current half-step sword intent was a bit flashy, and could not be compared to the real sword intent. After Tai Feng's defeat, only Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong and Yi Chen were left. In the crowd's eyes, the other disciples had no chance to compete for the first place, and the winner could only be one of them. After the 9th round, there were only 6 rounds left in the 10th round. The next 6 rounds were extremely intense. Some of the inner disciples who had a chance to compete for the top 10 were not afraid of the top 10 inner disciples, so they all used their most powerful skills to fight against the top 10 inner disciples. Unfortunately, the gap between their fighting power was too huge. Even if they tried their best, it would be useless. The 10th round had ended. Meng Chong and Yi Chen were tied for the first place with 20 points. Li Yunping had won 1 round, so he had 19 points, ranked 3rd. Yi Qing and Tai Feng had lost 1 round each, so they had 18 points, ranked 4th. Xiao Yi had lost 1 round and drawn 1 round, so he had 17 points, ranked 6th. Zhou Ruo, Pei Xiaoqing, Ghost Sword Li Kuang, and Qiu Ruodong were ranked 6th. There were 3 people who had been eliminated from the ranking. Feng Ping, Dong Haohua, and Song Fei, none of them had more than 15 points. Chapter 114. No matter what, the new top 10 inner disciples had been born, and the previous one had become a thing of the past. This year, the most eye-catching disciples were without a doubt Li Yun, Tai Feng, and Yi Chen. The 3 of them had stood out from hundreds of inner disciples. They had overcome all kinds of obstacles along the way, and each of them had performed their best martial arts. Towards the end, they had even defeated a few of the top 10 inner disciples of the last year. Among the 3, Yi Chen was the most talented one. With only the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm, he had won all his battles without losing a single one. He had also learned the half-step sword intent, which was the dream of every sword artist. His comprehensive ability was the best among the young generation of the Sky Cloud Martial School, and he was almost as famous as the core disciples. Of course, becoming one of the top 10 inner disciples was not the end of it. Next was the ranking competition. The ranking competition seemed complicated, but it was actually very simple. That was, the contestants would have to fight against the other 9 disciples one by one. As for those who had already fought against each other, the points would be calculated according to the result. For example, Yi Chen had beaten Feng Ping, Dong Haohua and Tai Feng, so he had 6 points. He still had to fight against the other 6 disciples, including the Blood Shadow Blade, Meng Chong. For this competition, the leaders of the Sky Cloud Martial School had prepared more than 500 yuan chi pellet. Every disciple who participated in the competition could take one. After taking the yuan chi pellet, not only would they feel energetic, they would also be able to recover from minor injuries. After resting for about half an hour, the head elder saw that all 10 of them were full of energy, so he announced the start of the competition. Yi Chen's first opponent was the Rainbow Sword, Qiu Ruodong, but she gave up. After all, everyone knew how powerful Yi Chen was, so there was no need to waste any more time. The second opponent was Pei Xiaoqing, who also gave up. The third opponent was the Peach Hand, Zhou Ruo. Although I don't have much hope, I still want to fight against you. Zhou Ruo, who had a beautiful face, lightly landed on the stage. Yi Chen nodded and said, "Let's start." Pa. Right from the start, Zhou Ruo used all of her power. The peach-colored Zhen Qi around her body burst out, attacking towards Yi Chen like a thunderbolt. It was obviously a big change from her previous casual fighting style. Before the palm power exploded, the stone pillar behind Yi Chen had already been shattered. What a domineering palm energy! A strange look flashed through Yi Chen's eyes. Without any hesitation, he directly waved his sword, which contained the half-step sword intent. Bang! Under the effect of the half-step sword intent, Yi Chen's attack was incomparably condensed. With only one attack, he had broken through Zhou Ruo's palm power. With a wave of her hand, Zhou Ruo set up a layer of peach-red qi barrier in front of her, and her whole body was sent flying. Yi Chen followed up with another slash. Zhou Ruo gritted her teeth. "If this move still can't do anything to you, I'll admit defeat." As she spoke, Zhou Ruo quickly formed a seal with her hands. Wave after wave of true energy frantically gathered in her hands. In the end, it transformed into a pink true energy bird. The bird spread its wings and shot out like a bolt of red lightning, unable to be seen by the naked eye. So fast. I didn't expect senior sister Zhou Ruo to have hidden her trump card as well. The spectating inner disciples exclaimed. Iron Fan I Ching laughed bitterly. His opponent did not use this move when they fought. Of course, he also had his own ultimate move that he had not used. His opponent should know this. The huge Zhenqi bird arrived in a blink of an eye. It was about to hit Yi Chen. Yi Chen looked calm. The others might not be able to see the trajectory of the huge Zhenqi bird, but he could. It was all thanks to his powerful soul power. A silver line flashed through the air. The hidden cloud sword in Yi Chen's hand had pointed at the weakest spot of the huge Zhenqi bird. All of a sudden, the huge Zhenqi bird became extremely unstable. With a popping sound, it disappeared into thin air. Zhou Ruo was shocked by Yi Chen's sword art. The blue bird seal was so fast, but it was still hit by his sword. Furthermore, it was the weakest spot of the bird. What kind of insight and control did he have? With a bitter smile, Zhou Ruo said, I have to admit, only you can compete with Meng Chong. I lost. The next battle was not Yi Chen's, but Li Yun's. After all, continuous battles would take a lot of energy and it would have a huge impact on the battle. Plus, Yi Chen's next opponent was Xiao Yi, who would definitely not admit defeat. It would be a tough battle for sure. Qiu Ruodong knew that she would not be able to compete with any one of the 10 people, but she still admitted defeat. Pei Shaoqing and Li Yun started fighting. After exchanging dozens of moves, Li Yun executed the ultimate skill of Sword Light Division. 14 sword lights shot out in a row. One of the sword lights had 2 layers of force, one bright and one dark. He managed to defeat Pei Shaoqing without any mishaps. After that, it was the battle between Tai Feng and Yi Qing. The two of them were evenly matched. After hundreds of attacks, there was no clear winner. However, towards the end of the battle, Tai Feng, who had the support of his power, was getting more and more powerful. Yi Qing kept performing his ultimate skills, but he still could not make a comeback. He had no choice but to admit defeat. If the battle continued, he would definitely lose. One after another, the battles started and ended. Soon, it was Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong's turn. His opponent was Li Yun. Li Yun did not waste any time. He attacked immediately. With a wave of his hand, 14 sword lights were shot out. Break! Meng Chong's body moved along with his blade. The blood-red blade light was unstoppable. It easily shattered the incoming sword lights. As for that bright and dark sword light, it was instantly shattered by his fist. Li Yun yelled. Another 3 sword lights were shot out. These 3 sword lights were indeed huge. They almost covered half of the platform. They were flying towards Meng Chong in a triangular formation. Meng Chong did not dare to be careless. The blood-red light shot out from both of his arms and into his long blade. He had broken the incoming sword lights 3 times in a row. After that, he threw a punch at Li Yun's protective Zhenqi layer. Crackle! Blood-red lightning flashed. Li Yun's mouth was bleeding. He was thrown off the platform. Meng Chong's thunder fist is getting more and more powerful. Yi Qing thought to himself. Meng Chong got off the platform. Yi Chen and Xiao Yi got on the platform. If you want to challenge Meng Chong, you will have to get past me first. Xiao Ye's upper body bent, a misty green light shone, 2 gigantic Zhenqi arms extended out from his shoulders, one green and one green. The green one was a little illusory, the green one had chi flow rising, like a burning flame. Just like a giant, Xiao Yi rushed towards Yi Chen with big steps, throwing out a punch. Tyrannical rampage! Out of everyone's expectation, Yi Chen did not use his sword skill. He made a fist with his left hand and threw out a punch. Puff, 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 puff. Under Xiao Ye's shocked gaze, the blue Zhenqi arm was broken into pieces. It turned into the purest yuan qi and disappeared in the air. Lose! Xiao Yi did not back off. He threw out an even more powerful green Jin Qi arm from his left shoulder. He wanted to defeat Yi Chen directly. Yi Chen yelled coldly, dominating one direction. Boom! He threw out a punch with a black light. The qi behind him was sucked into it. It was just like Tai Feng's power. It clashed with Xiao Ye's green Jin Qi arm. Thump thump thump, Xiao Yi took a few steps back. The green Jin Qi arm was showing signs of collapsing. He was really shocked. The green Jin Qi arm was the evolved version of the blue Jin Qi arm. Its power was more than 50% stronger, but it couldn't even block a punch from his opponent. How was he supposed to fight? The green Jin Qi arm merged with his body. Xiao Yi waved his hand. I'm done. You are the best. Then he turned and walked off the platform. Chapter 115. As long as he beats Brother Yi Qing, it will be the battle between Brother Meng Chong and Brother Yi Chen. Brother Yi Qing should not be able to beat Brother Yi Chen. After all, he lost to Brother Tai Feng. You're right. If Brother Meng Chong is still the champion this year, he probably won't get any good rewards. After all, last time he was rewarded with a low-rank Earth Realm Fist art, Shocking Thunder Fist. But if Brother Yi Chen wins, he will definitely get a low-rank Earth Realm martial art. While the crowd was talking, the competition continued. In fact, although the ranking was still uncertain, it was already clear that the first and second place would be either Meng Chong or Yi Chen. The third to fifth place would be Tai Feng, Xiao Yi and Yi Qing. The sixth to ninth place would be Zhou Ruo, Li Yun, Li Kuang and Pei Shaoqing. Qiu Ruodong would be the last. In the first round, Li Yun lost to Li Kuang. In the second round, Pei Shaoqing lost to Zhou Ruo. In the third round, Yi Qing lost to Xiao Yi. In the ninth round, Meng Chong walked onto the stage. Tai Feng shook his head. I am not his opponent. I give up. Boom. The crowd on the martial field suddenly exploded. Tai Feng had given up, which meant that Meng Chong would fight against Yi Chen in advance. This would undoubtedly be the most anticipated battle of the day. On the east side of the VIP seats, there was a row of teenagers. The oldest among them was only 18 or 19 years old, while the youngest was only 16 or 17. They were all wearing different clothes, but all of them had the unique cloud pattern of the Sky Cloud Martial School on their sleeve. The auras of this group of people were pure and vast. Nearly half of them could contend with Blood Shadow Saber Meng Chong. Some of them even far surpassed Meng Chong. They sat there and talked cheerfully. They were not affected by the atmosphere at all. They gave off an unfathomable pressure. Jingju, who do you think will win? Among them, a handsome teenager asked the teenager with a cold expression. The cold teenager said indifferently, boring. The handsome teenager smiled bitterly. Is there a need to be so cold? He turned around and asked the teenager in blue, Brother Luo, what do you think? The teenager in blue was indeed the second disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Luo Hanshan. He lowered his eyes, thought for a while and said, I think it will be Yi Chen. Oh, why is that? The other person beside him looked surprised. Luo Hanshan said, Meng Chong is like a sharp blade that can cut through anything. However, if it's too sharp, it'll break easily, which makes it less beautiful. But Yi Chen is like a vast lake, immeasurably deep. Since the beginning of the competition, he has been calm and unruffled. Thus, I deduced that it would be a long battle from the start. In the end, Yi Chen would be the one to persevere. Of course, speculations are just speculations after all. They can't be trusted. If we want to determine the victor, we'll have to fight. The handsome youth smiled and said, Senior Brother Luo's analytical ability has always been very strong, but I feel the same way. Whether the two of them will win will depend on the later stages. The girl in white, who was ranked 8th, suddenly said, Meng Chong will lose. The first person in line was a slightly older girl with plum blossom embroidery on her clothes. She mocked, Su Jing, this is the first time I've seen your evaluation. Su Jing didn't say anything. The other people looked at Su Jing with different expressions. Some of them were nervous, some of them were admiring her. She had just become a core disciple last year, but now she was ranked 8. Also, it seemed that she had not used all of her power to increase her rank. Otherwise, it would not be impossible for her to be in the top 5. From time to time, the inner disciples below the VIP seats would turn around and take a glance at her. They thought to themselves, this seat is for core disciples. If I can sit in this seat one day, how glorious would that be? 5 of the 10 platforms had already been destroyed. Yi Chen and Meng Chong were standing opposite each other on the platform that seemed to be relatively intact, staring at each other without blinking their eyes. Swoosh! Meng Chong took out his long blade and launched the first attack. A sharp blood-red blade light sliced through the air, hacking towards Yi Chen, who was not far away. Clang! No one knew when Yi Chen had also pulled out his sword. He waved out a stream of sword chi to block the incoming blade light. Take another 10 attacks. Meng Chong's expression was wild. The long blade in his hand was like a wild horse that had just run away from its reins. He crazily waved his blade towards Meng Chong. Ding, 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 ding! All of a sudden, the entire platform was filled with bright sword chi and blood-red blade light. Their figures had already been completely covered by the light, and could not be seen by the naked eye. Shoo! Shoo! The two of them were blown back, and once again they faced each other. Awesome! Among all the inner disciples, you are the only one who can take 11 attacks from me with all of my power. It had been a long time since Meng Chong had felt this good. Yi Chen's power had made his blood boil, and he was filled with the desire to fight. If he could defeat Yi Chen, he would definitely be able to reach the next level. Yi Chen said, "Let's continue." "All right, let's continue." As soon as they finished talking, their bodies had already collided. The blood-red blade light and the sword chi crisscrossed, fighting against each other. Soon, the platform was destroyed as well. Off the platform, all of the inner disciples were shocked. Apart from the first collision, it was impossible to tell who was fighting who had the upper hand, and who was at a disadvantage. All that could be seen was that the saber was faster than the previous one, and the sword was sharper than the previous one. Towards the end, the shock wave formed by the collision of the sword chi and the saber light was even more terrifying, destroying one platform after another nearby. The figures of the two could no longer be seen, and only the sword chi and the saber light could be seen sweeping from one platform to another, from the ground to the air, and from the air to the platform ruins. They were everywhere, and everywhere was the site of the battle. 100 attacks, 200 attacks, 300 attacks, 500 attacks. The two of them had already exchanged over 500 attacks, but there was still no clear winner. Yi Chen's half-step sword intent could not do anything to Meng Chong's blade power, and Meng Chong's fast blade power could not do anything to Yi Chen either. At this point, it was no longer a competition of power, but a competition of willpower and endurance. Whoever could last longer would be the winner. 1,000 attacks. No winner has been decided yet. Terrifying. An inner disciple looked at the sky. Right then, the sun was setting, and the bright afterglow was shining on the martial field, making the battle look even more intense. He could not help but gasp. Yeah. It would be amazing if the others could block 10 attacks from Brother Meng Chong, but Brother Yi Chen had already exchanged over 1,000 attacks with him. Both of them seemed to have the upper hand. I wonder who will have the last laugh. All of a sudden, the blood-red blade light and the bright sword chi collided with each other, and then shot up into the sky. Waves of powerful shock waves spread out in all directions, which even caused the platform to collapse. The crowd looked over and saw that Yi Chen's sword had blocked Meng Chong's long blade, and the two of them were frozen there. World-shocking thunder! Meng Chong clenched his left hand into a fist and threw it towards Yi Chen's head. Yi Chen sneered and threw out his left fist, which was shining with a black light. Crack! Like a thunderclap, both of them were sent flying backward. Again. With the protection of the pure jade body boosting spell, Yi Chen stomped on the platform behind him and shot towards Meng Chong like an arrow. Meng Chong was not scared at all. He threw out another punch. Boom! The two of them moved away from each other as soon as they made contact. There was a faint trace of blood on the corner of Meng Chong's mouth. On the VIP seats of the core disciples, Luo Han sighed and said, Yi Chen has won. Meng Chong is still slightly weaker than him. It is not easy for him to be able to fight until now. But this Yi Chen is very powerful. He has been winning all the time, even Meng Chong could not stop his rise. Chapter 116. Again. A blood-red light burst out from Meng Chong's body as he threw out a punch towards Yi Chen along with crackling thunder and lightning. It seemed like he was determined to win or die trying. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. As Meng Chong threw out his punch, Yi Chen could feel a shocking amount of electricity gathering in his body. His skin felt numb, and all of his hairs were standing up. He knew that he could not afford to be hit by that punch, otherwise even the pure jade body boosting spell would not be able to protect him. Thunder and lightning had always been able to ignore defense. Dominating the king. The third movement of the Tyrant Fist art was thrown out. A dense black light was brought out by the fist power, forming an umbrella in front of Yi Chen, blocking out the attack of the electricity. Boom! The broken platform under their feet was split into two. One half was made up of electricity, while the other half was made up of scattered black light. Meng Chong puked out a mouthful of blood, which was evaporated in the air by the electricity. He was blown out for hundreds of meters, and finally landed heavily on the marble floor. Crack! The floor cracked under Meng Chong's feet. On the other side, Yi Chen was also blown out for 70 to 80 meters, leaving a crack on the floor. It was clear who would win. Looking down at his bare right arm, Yi Chen was shocked. If he had not performed the third movement of the Tyrant Fist art, he would not have been able to win so easily. The Tyrant Fist art was divided into 4 movements. The first style was called Tyrannical Rampage. It belonged to the aggressive type, and it could devour the opponent's chi gene for its own use. However, it could only be used against opponents who were slightly weaker than the user. Against opponents who were stronger than the user, the devouring effect could not be used. The second movement was called Dominating the World. It belonged to the defensive type. When the opponent attacked, it could absorb the yuan qi of the surrounding space and merge it into the fist power. The third movement was called Dominating the King. It belonged to the offensive and defensive type. When the punch was thrown out, an umbrella-shaped black light would form a defensive shield, blocking out the opponent's chi. At the same time, his own fist power would be able to attack the opponent without any hindrance. As for the strongest fourth move, Tyrannical Millennium, Yi Chen currently did not have enough Zhen Qi to support it. Unless he was in a life-or-death situation, he absolutely could not use it. Otherwise, if he used up too much Zhen Qi, he would not have the strength to protect himself. Letting out a mouthful of turbid air, Yi Chen raised his head and looked at Meng Chong. Meng Chong stabbed the long blade in his left hand into the ground. He grinned and said, "Great. Today you are more skilled than me. However, we still have a long way to go. Let's see who will have the last laugh. I'll wait for you." Although that was what he said, Yi Chen didn't really care about it. Up until now, no one who had been surpassed by him had ever surpassed him, just like Wang Gang, Wu Zongming, Huang Bingwen, Zhang Haoren and so on. If he was surpassed by someone else, then how could he even talk about becoming more powerful? How could he even talk about catching up with the top 4 young masters, and walk out of the Windy Nation and into the world? The world was way too big. The path of a martial artist was like sailing a boat against the current. If one did not keep moving forward, one would fall behind. If one day he was surpassed by someone else, then he would have to reflect on himself. Once Meng Chong was defeated, Yi Chen would definitely become the number 1 inner disciple. The other people who had not fought against him before would not be able to stop him anymore. The audience and the VIP seats were all talking about this. Luo Hans said, "The most official competition in our school is the inner disciple ranking competition. Once you become one of the top 10 inner disciples, you will be qualified to challenge core disciples and replace them. I think Yi Chen and Meng Chong are already at the top of the core disciples. Tai Feng and Xiao Yi are also not bad. You guys should be careful." A few core disciples who were ranked at the bottom said, "Brother Luo, don't worry. We did not waste this year either. We will show them how powerful we are." Indeed, except for that Yi Chen and Meng Chong, who are a bit tricky, the others will have to ask me first if I want to be a core disciple or not. Luo Hans smiled. The number of core disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School had always been maintained at 24. If one of them became a core disciple, one of them would have to leave. No one wanted to lose their core disciple status. In the following days, it would definitely be a fierce competition. As for himself, he would also challenge the hidden fragrance sword Zhu Mei when the time was right. Luo Hans turned his head and glanced at the beautiful girl who had plum blossom embroidery on her clothes. When the last ray of light of the sunset shone on the horizon, the ranking competition was finally over. According to the ranking, the first place was Yi Chen, who had a perfect winning record. He had defeated 9 people, so he had 18 points. The second place was Meng Chong with 16 points, the third place was Tai Feng with 14 points, the fourth place was Xiao Yi with 12 points, the fifth place was Yi Qing with 10 points, the sixth place was Zhou Rua with 8 points, the seventh place was Li Kuang with 6 points, the eighth place was Li Yun with 4 points, the ninth place was Pei Xiaoqing with 2 points, and the 10th place was Qiu Ruodong with 0 points. When the ranking was announced, Yi Tianhao laughed out loud and said, "Chen is now the number 1 inner disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. He is the number 1 genius in the history of our Yi family. The third leader of the Yi family, Yi Tang and Yi Xian, no one can be compared with him." Xin Yuqing said in an annoyed tone, "Look at you, people go to higher places, water flows to lower places. If Chen wants to be compared, he should be compared with the core disciples of those famous martial institutions. Don't make him look bad." I'm just happy." Many important people around them cupped their hands and said, "Congratulations! Leader Yi, your son has already mastered the half-step sword intent at such a young age. He will definitely soar into the sky in the future. Leader Yi, if we have the chance, let's have a drink. Our son is not good enough. Leader Yi, you should ask your son to teach him a lesson." Yi Tianhao was in a good mood, he said. "Not at all, not at all. If you are willing to give me face, please find some time to visit our Yi family. I will definitely welcome you." Of course, of course. The other important people all had their own thoughts, but no matter what they thought, Yi Chen's name had become really famous after today. 16 years old, he had mastered the half-step sword intent. Not to mention the Windy Nation, even in the entire South Zhuo region, he would not be bad. The only thing he was lacking was his cultivation. Of course, some people were looking forward to Yi Chen's growth, while some were planning to nip him in the bud. Zhu Liang was not the only one. For them, it was very easy to kill a genius, but once this genius grew up, it would not be that easy. They had to kill him as soon as possible. The head elder of the Sky Cloud Martial School slowly stood up. The inner disciple ranking competition has come to an end. Now, the rewards will be given out. The 7th to 10th place will be rewarded with 300 low-rank soul stones, the 4th to the 6th place will be rewarded with 600 low-rank soul stones, the 2nd to the 3rd place will be rewarded with 1,000 low-rank soul stones, the 1st place will be rewarded with 2,000 low-rank soul stones and a low-rank Earth Realm martial art. Besides these, according to the decision made by the Elder Council, the number 1 inner disciple will go to the Emerald Martial Palace with the congratulatory team on the 9th of July. Going to the Emerald Martial Palace, that is a place to broaden one's horizons. All the disciples who are able to go there are not simple. At that time, all the elite martial institutions will definitely gather there, such as the top 4 child, the top disciples among the core disciples. I'm afraid it will not be that easy. All the martial institutions will definitely compete with each other. I heard that the top 10 inner disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace are all as powerful as the core disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. No wonder they decided to let Yi Chen go with them. Yeah. Even if Yi Chen is not as powerful as them, with only his half-step sword intent, he will still be able to make the Sky Cloud Martial School look good. I see. How could the Elder Council's plan be hidden from the powerful figures who were always scheming against each other? Chapter 117. 2,000 low-rank soul stones and a low-rank Earth Realm martial art. If Yi Chen said he was not tempted, he would be lying. 2,000 low-rank soul stones would be worth 800,000 to 900,000 gold in the Northwest Auction House, and a low-rank Earth Realm martial art could be sold for millions of gold. Most of the small families in the Windy Nation might not be able to buy one even if they sold all their asset. Of course, the potential of the number 1 inner disciple was indeed worth this price, and the martial institutions did not lack martial arts. After all, a martial institution that had hundreds of years of history, it would be unreasonable for them not to have some martial arts. However, Yi Chen also knew that even if an outsider offered 10 million gold, the top management of the martial institution would not agree to sell a martial art. Martial arts were not to be shared with outsiders. However, after hearing the latter part of the message, Yi Chen paused a bit. Follow the congratulatory team to the Emerald Martial Palace in 1 month? This was out of his expectation, but he did not care too much about it. Whether he went or not, it was all arranged by the top management. All he needed to do was to follow. The silent hills. In a vast mountain range, the fog never dissipated, and there was miasma everywhere. Deep in the mountains, there were often beast roars that could shake people's hearts. The sun was hanging high in the sky, and the golden light was blocked out by the fog. At first glance, there were colorful lights everywhere, bright and creepy. This was deep in the silent hills, and the natural yuan qi was especially rich. However, because of the miasma, warriors could not absorb it, or else they would go crazy. On a small hill that was split open by something, Yi Chen stood with his hands behind his back, with an ancient-looking longsword hanging on his waist. He looked down and saw that in the fog hundreds of meters away, 2 huge shadows were colliding with each other from time to time, making earth-shaking noises. A woo, a horrifying roar was heard. Dozens of trees in front of him were knocked down, and a house-sized demonic wolf was blown towards him. The demonic wolf had no fur, and its body was covered with sharp thorns, which made its body 3 times bigger, and its blood-red pupils looked like it was about to drip blood. Bramble demonic wolf, top rank 4 beast. No matter how hard the wind blew, Yi Chen's body did not move, only his clothes were fluttering. Dong 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 dong. The ground shook, and a silver-gray demonic bull that was even bigger than the bramble demon wolf walked out of the mist step by step. Its cold and merciless eyes first locked on the bramble demon wolf, and then looked at where Yi Chen was. Moo! The silver-gray demonic bull roared into the sky, and the mist twisted violently. Electric currents appeared on the surface of the nearby fallen leaves, burning them into nothingness. Yi Chen was slightly surprised. It was actually a rare silver electric demon bull. This was in existence even more dangerous than the bramble demon wolf. No wonder the bramble demon wolf couldn't beat it. The 2 demonic beasts were the size of a house. Their demonic aura soared to the sky, stirring up terrifying whirlwinds. 2 peak level 4 demonic beasts should be good for training. If the others knew what Yi Chen was thinking, they would definitely say that he was just talking nonsense. Demonic beasts were already much more powerful than warriors of the same level. Even the most talented warrior might not be able to win against a demonic beast, not to mention 2 top rank 4 demonic beasts, which were equivalent to peak level late condensing reality realm warriors. The bramble demon wolf looked at the silver electric demonic bull in fear. It lowered its body slightly. Its instinct told it that it had to kill any human that came in here. But the silver electric demonic bull in front of it was much more dangerous than this human. If it was not careful, it would be killed. Roar, roar, roar. The bramble demon wolf roared at the silver electric demonic bull, as if it was sending some kind of message. After a while, the silver electric demonic bull let out an electric current from its nose. It stomped on the ground twice and unexpectedly rushed out. Shoo! The silver electric demonic bull's huge body did not slow it down. Like a thick silver electric light, it rushed towards Yi Chen, who was on the hill. At the same time, the bramble demon wolf also attacked Yi Chen, its body rammed towards the hill. Piss off! Clang! The hidden cloud sword was unsheathed, and its momentum was unpredictable. It easily hit the silver electric demonic bull's body. The silver electric demonic bull's fierce eyes were filled with shock. Its huge body flew back, smashing many old vines that were full of ancient trees. Boom! The hill under its feet collapsed, and the bramble demon wolf jumped out from the rubble. It opened its mouth and spat out a cloud of black air mixed with ice. Yi Chen's feet lightly touched the rubble that had not yet fallen, and his body rose straight up. A sword chi, like a dragon from the 9 heavens, crazily shot down towards the bramble demon wolf. The bramble demon wolf was the same as the silver electric demonic bull. It did not expect Yi Chen's sword art to be so powerful. Its body flipped in the air and crashed into the flying boulders to avoid the sharp sword chi. Cloud impermanence, startling cloud, where do you think you can hide? With one punch, the bramble demon wolf's black air was shattered by the fist energy. The countless ice cubes were shattered by the fist energy, turning into ice shards that sprinkled down from the sky. Below, the sword chi, which was originally moving in a straight line, twisted a few times. Unexpectedly, like the clouds in the sky, it had no form, and slashed at the back of the bramble demon wolf. Crack! A few thorns were cut down, and the bramble demon wolf lost its balance and fell heavily on the ground, creating a huge pit. Crack! Silver lightning shot out from the side. It was the silver electric demonic bull that did not give up. Its speed was like lightning and its sound was like thunder. It was as fast as lightning, burning the air in front of it into a vacuum. Startling cloud! Yi Chen waved out a thick sword chi in the air. The sword chi was extremely aggressive. Wherever it went, the air was swept away, filled with endless explosive power. The silver electric demonic bull opened its mouth and spat out a ball of lightning, which clashed with the sword chi. Crack! Crack! The lightning was all broken, and the sword chi slashed on the silver electric demonic bull's forehead, leaving a deep sword mark that could reach the bone, and blood was flowing out. In the next moment, the silver electric demon cow lost its balance and fell headfirst to the ground, causing it to shake incessantly. Even the electricity around its body leaked out, causing the burnt ground to crack and turn black. Clumps of fertile weeds were burned to ashes. Suddenly climbing up from the ground, the silver electric demonic bull looked at Yi Chen with fear, not daring to attack again. Although its defense was very strong, it was not strong enough to ignore the sword chi. If it got hit too much, it would still be in danger. On the side, the bramble demon wolf could not help but lean towards the silver electric demonic bull, as if it was ready to join forces with it to attack and kill this powerful human. Earth Realm low-rank sword art, indeed powerful. Lightly landing on an ancient tree, Yi Chen looked down at the sword body and thought to himself. It had been more than half a month since the end of the ranking competition. Half a month ago, Yi Chen chose a sword art from many Earth Realm low-rank martial arts, called the Startling Cloud sword art. The clouds were unpredictable, and so was the Startling Cloud sword art. Every movement was full of changes, and even the cultivator could not completely control it, not to mention the opponent. In addition, the Startling Cloud sword art was also a very aggressive sword art. Once the sword was thrown out, the wind would stop and the clouds would be startled. Its lethality was extremely horrifying, and it was many times more powerful and faster than the lone peak of 13 swords. After training it, Yi Chen went to the Silent Hills alone, wanting to test the power of the sword art on the beasts. This battle was indeed powerful. Chapter 118. Not far away, the silver electric demonic cow and the bramble demon wolf roared at the same time, attacking towards Yi Chen from both sides. One of them was as fast as lightning, while the other one was as agile as a black smoke. Boom! The ancient tree was uprooted, and a huge amount of soil was sent flying in the air. Yi Chen jumped into the air, and threw out a sword chi backhandedly. Puff! A deep sword mark appeared on the bramble demon wolf's back leg, and its body quickly fell onto the ground. It slid hundreds of meters away due to the inertia, and finally stopped after hitting another ancient tree. Standing up, the bramble demon wolf shook its dizzy head, and stared at Yi Chen with a slight fear in its eyes. This human didn't seem to be very powerful, but up until now, it and the silver electric demonic cow still couldn't do anything to him. Instead, it was covered in dust, and its back leg was injured. If this continued, it and the silver electric demonic cow would probably be killed before they could kill Yi Chen. The silver electric demonic cow also wanted to retreat, but the bramble demon wolf hadn't retreated yet, so how could it retreat? I have almost understood the power of the sky cloud sword art. Now it's time to take care of them. Before, Yi Chen didn't use his half-step sword intent, and those sword chi were only normal sword chi. Turning around, Yi Chen waved his sword twice, and 2 sword chi that had been infused with the half-step sword intent were thrown out. Puff! Puff! A sword hole appeared on the foreheads of the silver electric demonic cow and the bramble demon wolf respectively. Their huge bodies fell heavily onto the ground, and no longer breathing. Without the protection of the beast chi, the bodies of the demonic beasts weren't as hard as expected, and were easily cut open. Inside each body was a bowl-sized pellet. The pellet of a top-rank 4 demonic beast was worth over 10,000 gold, and was put into Yi Chen's storage ring by Yi Chen. After that, some valuable demonic beast materials were also collected by Yi Chen. After that, Yi Chen stood up straight and looked at the deepest part of the Silent Hills. That was a true forbidden area. A few decades ago, a powerful force had sent experts to the depths to search for some rare and precious herbs. Unfortunately, they encountered a level 7 demonic beast, the ghost-faced demonic cow. Out of more than 100 people, only 1 person managed to escape, but he died a few days later. The reason was that the demonic chi in his body was too strong, and he died of madness. Since then, no one dared to enter. A rank 7 demonic beast. Yi Chen could not imagine it at all, since it was equivalent to an astral-reaching realm warrior. Not to mention Yi Chen, even the leaders of the top 5 martial institutions would not be able to handle a single attack from it. But it was hard to say whether it was true or not, since besides the rumors, no one had actually seen it with their own eyes. The only survivor from decades ago had already gone insane when he came out. Shaking his head, Yi Chen leaned to the side and leaped onto an ancient tree that was over 100 feet tall. With a few flashes, he disappeared without a trace. Not long after Yi Chen left, a figure shot through the mist. Pap! Lightly stepping on the ground, the middle-aged man saw the 2 demonic beast corpses lying on the ground. He couldn't help but curse. I finally found out where this brat went. Who would have thought that he would go to the deepest part of the Silent Hills? The mist here is so thick that people can't even look at it directly. You can't tell anything from 100 steps away. Otherwise, how could I let him leave safely? I would have killed him on the spot. This man was indeed Zhu Liang, the middle-aged man who had watched the inner disciple ranking competition of the Sky Cloud Martial School half a month ago. At the same time, he was also the intelligence master of the Purple Sun Martial School. He had sent his warriors to guard the bottom of the Windy Mountain, ready to kill Yi Chen the moment he went out alone. However, after Yi Chen went down the mountain, he went straight into the silent hills. By the time Zhu Liang heard the news, it was already too late. He could only follow and try his luck to see if he could run into Yi Chen. "Brat, you sure are lucky. But next time, you will die for sure." Zhu Liang's eyes were filled with killing intent. Roar. Right at this moment, a majestic roar sounded. Following that, the sky suddenly darkened. Dark clouds covered the sky, covering the radiance of the fiery sun. Such a powerful beast Qi. It is at least a level 6 beast. Zhu Liang's face was full of fear. He hurried to run away. Far away, a beam of black light that was as thick as a water bucket shot out. Along the way, trees collapsed and mountains were pierced. The aftermath of the black light swept out a deep ravine that extended straight into the earth. The speed of the black light was too fast. Zhu Liang had no time to dodge. He roared, and a burning light suddenly rose from his body, protecting him tightly. Boom! The burning light was shattered. Zhu Liang was bleeding from every orifice, and his clothes were torn. "Little bastard, this beast must have been provoked by you." Zhu Liang came without a sound, so he did not attract any beast's attention. Thinking about it, he realized that the battle between Yi Chen and the beast was too loud, and it had attracted more powerful beasts from the deeper parts of the silent hills. Zhu Liang had become the scapegoat. Without caring about his wounded body, Zhu Liang pushed his Zhen Qi as hard as he could. His body turned into a burning light and shot far away. At the same time, he threw a dark red pellet into his mouth. After a while, the source of the black light finally appeared in the distance. Its huge body was standing in the middle of the hills. It was tens of meters tall, and it was a huge black python. If the mist was gone, people would see a shocking scene from the sky. A ravine stretched from dozens of miles away to here. In other words, the black light was shot from dozens of miles away. Such a terrifying range was unheard of. If it was a little closer, whether Zhu Liang could survive or not would be a problem. After all, the attack power of the black light would definitely be reduced if it was too far away. Seeing that the aura had disappeared, the black python bumped the mountain next to it with its huge head. The mountain shook a few times, and a few huge cracks appeared on the wall, making a cracking sound. Lowering its towering upper body, the giant black python slithered back in the direction it came from, crushing ancient trees one after another. Among the thousands of mountains, there was a magnificent valley. The valley was full of trees, and there were lakes of different sizes, just like the stars in the sky. In a yard next to a lake, 3 young girls were sitting and chatting. "Sister Ji, have you heard about the inner disciple ranking competition that was held in the Sky Cloud Martial School half a month ago?" The round-faced girl in green clothes suddenly asked. The beautiful girl with an aloof temperament said indifferently, "Is that so? I don't think there is anyone worth paying attention to in the Sky Cloud Martial School." The pretty girl next to her nodded and said, "The Sky Cloud Martial School is ranked last among the top 5 martial institutions. The top 10 inner disciples are only as powerful as the inner disciples of our Emerald Martial Palace, and the top 10 inner disciples of our Emerald Martial Palace are only as powerful as the core disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School." The round-faced girl said, "I heard that there are 2 geniuses in this year's Sky Cloud Martial School. One is called Meng Chong, and the other is called Yi Chen. They are both at the top of the core disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School." Yi Chen. The beautiful girl and the pretty girl looked at the round-faced girl in surprise. The round-faced girl asked confusedly, "What's wrong?" The pretty girl asked, "How is that Yi Chen? He beat Meng Chong, who was the top 10 inner disciples in the last year's Sky Cloud Martial School, and won the first place. I heard that he is very powerful." The beautiful girl was slightly surprised, but she didn't care about it anymore. So what if he was the top 10 inner disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School? She was now one of the 4 core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace. There was no comparison between them. The round-faced girl continued, that Yi Chen is not only very powerful, but he has also mastered the half-step sword intent. Right now, everyone in the Windy Nation is talking about him. What? The pretty girl and the beautiful girl couldn't believe it. They subconsciously thought that the two of them only had the same name, and could not be the Yi Chen they knew. Chapter 119. Days passed by. When there were only 10 days left until the 9th of July, Yi Chen felt a bit strange. Why hadn't the higher-ups prepared to go to the Emerald Martial Palace yet? The Emerald Martial Palace was 70,000 miles away from the Sky Cloud Martial School. Even if he rode the half-beast horse, the ghost-eye jade lion, it would still take him 13 to 14 days to get there. Just like that, another 5 days passed. Yi Chen didn't care about going to the Emerald Martial Palace anymore. Since the higher-ups weren't in a hurry, why should he? The Emerald Martial Palace was not a place he wanted to go. The 7th of July. Yi Chen was training his Zhenqi in the yard. He was only one step away from the late condensing reality realm. Although it was impossible for him to make a breakthrough in a short period of time, he still wanted to give it a try. After all, for him, the difference between the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm and the late condensing reality realm was too huge. At least if he could reach the same cultivation level, he would be able to compete with all the young warriors, even if he had to face young Master North Snow or young Master Duanmu. Crack! The low-rank soul stone in his hand cracked into 2 pieces. Yi Chen opened his eyes with a regretful look on his face. With his current cultivation level, it was still too difficult for him to make a breakthrough. It would still take him a while to reach the late condensing reality realm. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Yi Chen thought it was Wu Zongming, so he yelled, "Coming!" Opening the door of the yard, a young man that Yi Chen had never seen before appeared in front of him, wearing black clothes. "I am the executor disciple. The head elder asked me to inform you that it is time to go to the Emerald Martial Palace. Go to the welcoming plaza now," the young man said indifferently. Yi Chen was surprised. "Go now? Can I get there in 2 days?" Shaking his head, Yi Chen didn't understand, so he responded, "All right, I will go now." The executor disciple left. Yi Chen went back to his room, prepared a few sets of clothes and some necessities, then cleaned the room a bit, closed the door and walked to the welcoming plaza. On the grand and flat welcoming plaza, 4 people were standing there. The 2 people in the middle were the first elder, who was over 60 years old, and the 4th elder, who had a sturdy body. The sense of power released from their bodies was as deep as the ocean. One of them was Luo Hanshan, who was wearing a blue robe, and the other one was Su Jing, who was wearing a white robe. "Great Elder, 4th Elder." Yi Chen saluted the 2 elders. The Great Elder smiled and said, "Yi Chen, have you made any progress this month?" Hearing him, a smile also appeared on the 4th Elder's face. They had already heard about how fast Yi Chen had improved. 1 year ago, he was still a Mortal Realm Stage 6 warrior, and now, he had already reached the peak of mid-condensing reality realm. Not to mention that he had a great comprehensive ability, he had mastered all the martial arts he had learned to the highest level. Bringing him to the Emerald Martial Palace this time was more or less to gain some face for the Sky Cloud Martial School. Otherwise, it would have been better to bring other core disciples. After all, compared to the top 5 core disciples, Yi Chen's foundation was still a bit weak. Yi Chen said, "I haven't made much progress in my cultivation, but I've just learned the Shocking Cloud swordsmanship." "You can't rush to raise your cultivation." "What? You've learned the Shocking Cloud swordsmanship?" The 4th elder slightly nodded, then he was shocked and stared at Yi Chen in shock. Yi Chen nodded. He didn't need to hide this kind of thing. Not to mention, with the attention he was getting now, he wouldn't be able to keep it a secret for too long. Lu Hanshan was shocked. Learning the Shocking Cloud swordsmanship in only a month? What kind of abnormal martial arts talent was this? The Shocking Cloud swordsmanship was a low-rank Earth Realm sword art. Ordinary people might not even be able to learn it in 5 years. If it were Lu Hanzhan himself, it would take him at least half a year. In the entire Sky Cloud Martial School, perhaps only Zhu Mei could learn it in 3 to 4 months. However, compared to Yi Chen, the gap was not just a little bit, it was double or triple. The Great Elder couldn't believe it. Martial artists who have learned the Shocking Cloud swordsmanship will have a strong Shocking Cloud sword aura when they are fighting. He didn't continue his words, because Yi Chen's temperament suddenly changed. Wave after wave of illusory sword aura gushed out. His whole body seemed like a treasured sword that had been unsheathed. His sword aura was unstable, but it was filled with a horrifying explosive power. It is indeed the Shocking Cloud swordsmanship. I can't believe he can use it so easily. The Great Elder gasped in shock. He realized that he had underestimated Yi Chen after all. However, he couldn't blame himself, because a genius who had mastered the half-step sword intent was not someone he could easily guess. Among the three of them, only Su Jing didn't seem to be surprised. Caw. At this moment, a high-pitched bird song came from the top of the windy mountain. The bird's song was short and high-pitched, along with a majestic aura. Yi Chen looked towards the direction of the sound and was surprised. On the precipitous peak, a giant bird swooped down. This giant bird had a majestic physique, and its wingspan was more than 10 meters. Its entire body was covered in dark green feathers, and under the sunlight, it glowed with a metallic luster. Its pair of claws could easily grab a house, and they were curved like an anchor. Lu Hanzhan introduced the bird to Yi Chen. This is the guardian spirit beast of our Sky Cloud Martial School, Wind Vulture. Wind Vulture? Yi Chen had heard of this name before. In the easternmost area of the Windy Nation, there was a great devil grassland. There were countless demonic beasts living on the grassland, among which the half-demon horse, the ghost-eye jade lion, was the most famous one. However, people living near the grassland didn't think so. In their eyes, the most famous demonic beast was the king of the great devil grassland, the 5th-level Wind Vulture. The Wind Vulture could travel over 40,000 miles per day, it was as fast as lightning, and was over 10 times faster than the half-demon horse. It was perfect for traveling, but it was not easy to catch it. Although it was only a 5th-level demonic beast, which was equivalent to a mid-clasping Yuan realm martial artist, even a late-clasping Yuan realm martial artist might not be able to catch up with it. Besides, even if a late-clasping Yuan realm martial artist managed to catch it, it would be extremely difficult to tame it. Yi Chen didn't expect that the Sky Cloud Martial School had a 5th-level Wind Vulture. No wonder they weren't in a hurry to go to the Emerald Martial School. With the Wind Vulture's speed, it would only take them 2 days to get there. Not only would it save them a lot of time and effort, it would also show the school's prestige. Whoosh! A fierce gust of wind blew, and the Wind Vulture landed in the middle of the plaza. The head elder said, "Come on up." After saying that, the head elder flashed across the air and landed on the Wind Vulture's broad and flat back. When everyone had boarded the Wind Vulture, the head elder reminded them, "Hold on, the Wind Vulture is very fast." Luo Hanzhan grinned and said, "Head elder is right, the first time I rode on the Wind Vulture, I almost fell from the sky, it's unbelievably fast." Hearing this, Yi Chen and Su Jing didn't dare to be careless, they both silently activated their Jin Qi. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Wind Vulture fiercely flapped its wings for a few times, then suddenly leaped up into the air like a sharp arrow. The Wind Vulture's wings were tucked behind its back to reduce the air resistance. The speed of the Wind Vulture, which was close to the sound barrier, was unimaginably fast, as if it was riding on a rocket. The air that was blowing towards its face was no different than a sharp knife, cutting its skin. Yi Chen planted his feet on the ground, and activated his protective Jin Qi to protect his face from the knife-like air current. Soon, the Wind Vulture flew high up into the clouds, flying far away. Chapter 120. Above the ocean of clouds, the Wind Vulture flapped its wings and flew hundreds of meters away. The shrill, long-lasting sonic booms behind it didn't reach anyone's ears, because the wind vulture's flying speed had already surpassed the speed of sound. The head elder and the fourth elder were standing in front of the wind eagle's back like two towering mountains, relieving most of the pressure on Yi Chen and the other two. Otherwise, only the strong airflow caused by the supersonic speed of the eagle could easily blow them away and make them fall from the sky. Brother Yi, you have to be mentally prepared for this trip to the Emerald Martial Palace. I believe you also know why the higher-ups want you to come with us. Su Jing abruptly used her Zhenqi to talk to Yi Chen. Yi Chen nodded. Why isn't senior sister Zhu Mei here? None of the head disciples from the top 4 martial institutions will go there, unless one of them has reached the clasping Yuan realm and is on par with young Master Emerald. I see. Yi Chen thought for a while and realized that Zhu Mei was right. If Zhu Mei went, she would inevitably be compared with young Master Emerald. But now, she didn't want to go. So, everyone could only compare the second disciples of each martial institution. Just then, the fourth elder said to Yi Chen and the other two with his Zhenqi, "There is a large number of flesh demons in front of us, be careful not to get sucked into them." Flesh demon? Yi Chen froze for a second. This was a kind of demonic beast that floated in the air without any intelligence. It was shaped like a huge meatball and had a lot of scary-looking mouth. Normally, 3 mouths would be a rank 1 meat beast, 6 mouths would be a rank 2 meat beast, 9 mouths would be a rank 3 meat beast, and so on and so forth. Flesh demons usually lived by inhaling and exhaling the qi of heaven and earth. Occasionally they would eat meat. Before he could think about it, disgusting meatballs appeared in the vast sea of clouds in front of him. These meatballs were brownish-red in color, and their bodies were covered with mouths with sharp teeth. The largest one was no different from a small mountain, and the smallest one was the size of a water buffalo. They floated in the air with the wind, and if a flying beast passed by, they would open their mouths and release a terrifying suction force, swallowing it into their stomachs. Sky-burning palm. The wind vulture was incredibly fast. Seeing that it was about to break into the group of meat spirit beasts, the fourth elder let out a resonant growl and pushed his palm out. Rumble! A large number of flesh demons exploded and were burned into nothingness. The shockwave even tore a large hole in the sea of clouds. Yi Chen was secretly shocked. Late clasping Yuan realm martial artists are indeed extraordinary. Every single move of theirs has the destructive power to destroy mountains. Suddenly, the wind vulture swayed intensely and slowed down. The few of them turned their heads to look. Unbeknownst to them, a meatball the size of a small hill had appeared on their right rear. The largest mouth on the meatball was wide open, sucking in the air and the sea of clouds in a spiral. It was like a huge bottomless pit swallowing everything. Yi Chen and the other two had low cultivation bases, so they were about to be sucked out. The first elder made his move. He raised the index and middle fingers of his right hand and drew a line in the air. Poochie! A purplish-golden ray of light extended out. It was as sharp as a blade, and it split the meatball into 2. The cut was smooth, without a trace of roughness. The fourth elder said in admiration, "A 5th-grade meat beast's defensive power is even more terrifying than a real mountain. It seems that your purple light finger has already reached the highest level. It can cut a mountain as if it was nothing." Ah, it took me over 10 years to reach the highest level of this mid-rank Earth Realm finger art. I can't compare with you. The first elder gave a bitter smile. Yi Chen was speechless. The first elder was obviously talking about him. Hearing him, the fourth elder was speechless again. He had seen all kinds of geniuses, but he had never seen a genius who could learn a low-rank Earth Realm martial art within a month. What a freak! Above another piece of sea of clouds, a hazy white light flashed like a bolt of lightning. It seemed to be able to travel a mile within a blink of an eye. If one looked carefully, one would be able to see that the white light was actually a huge white bird. The white bird had a strong and muscular body, with a pair of dark yellow claws under its belly. There were 4 people standing on the back of the white bird. The leading 2 were over 40 years old. They were wearing white robes with golden edges and snowflake patterns on the cuffs. Behind the 2 were 2 young men. The one on the left had a strong and muscular build. He was a head taller than the 2 in front. His eyes were extremely sharp and aggressive, as if he was being attacked by a heavy blade. The one on the right looked ordinary, wearing white robes. If he was thrown into a crowd, it would be hard to find him. However, when one looked at his eyes, one would feel that he was not ordinary at all. His pure crystal-like eyes gave people a soul-stirring feeling. The blade light seemed to be invisible, it seemed to be able to transform into the blade intent. It was indeed the North Snow Quick Blade Lynch. As for the strong and muscular teenager, he was the second core disciple of the North Snow Martial Academy, Blade UU. We, the North Snow Martial Academy, never liked to fight. But even though we don't like to fight, it's still a shame to fall behind others. You too have to work hard. The middle-aged man on the right reminded them with a smile on his face. Yu chuckled and said, I admit that I am no match for Zhuang Fei. But except for him, I, Yu, am not afraid of anyone in the younger generation of the Windy Nation. At this moment, the bearded middle-aged man, who seemed to be the leader of the group, sighed and said, In recent years, the North Snow Martial Academy has started to lose its strength. There haven't been any outstanding geniuses appearing in the ranking competitions of the inner disciples. However, the Sky Cloud Martial School is quite lucky. They actually have a disciple who has mastered the half-step sword intent. Lynch's eyes lit up. He was believed by the leader of the group, Shui Warren, to be the one who had the highest chance of mastering the blade intent. Now that he knew that there was a disciple who had mastered the half-step sword intent and was only 1 step away from mastering the real sword intent, he was a bit excited. The rain was pouring down. A loach-like black-scaled demonic beast was swimming in the sea of clouds. Every time it lurked and reappeared, it would be several hundred meters away. Coupled with its huge body and terrifying appearance, ordinary people would think that a legendary evil dragon had appeared in the world and was going to harm the human world. Junior Sister Yuan, you've made great progress in the past few months. Otherwise, we wouldn't have asked you to come with us to the Emerald Martial Palace. There were 5 people standing on the beast's head. A young man with an umbrella said to the tall girl with a smile. The tall girl had a pretty face and a pair of straight and long legs. If Yi Chen were here, he would definitely recognize her. She was indeed Yuan Shumei, who had helped the Ling family with the mission. Compared to a few months ago, her qi was much more powerful. Obviously, she had made great progress. Yuan Shumei smiled lightly and said, I think the elders want me to see the world. Plus, following Brother Nangong will definitely not be a bad thing. How come all the female disciples of the Rudra Martial School are so talkative? I am the only one who is dumb. The young man with the umbrella said sarcastically. Hee. Yuan Shumei laughed. Caw. From afar an ear-piercing beast roar came out, shaking the sea of clouds. The elder of the Rudra Martial School, who was standing in the front, raised his head and looked over, but couldn't see anything. He murmured to himself, It should be the double-headed Bat King from the Purple Sun Martial School, it is quite fast. A few hundred miles away from the black-scaled demon beast, a black-red 2-headed bat with a wingspan of more than 10 meters swept across the sky. On the back of the bat, 4 people were standing. One of them was Ouyang Ming, who had a conflict with Yi Chen in the Northwest Auction House. Beside him was a short and skinny teenager, who looked very ordinary, even a bit ugly, which formed a sharp contrast with Ouyang Ming. Piercing through the sea of clouds, the 4 of them rushed towards the southwest. Chapter 121. July 8th afternoon. The wind vulture darted out of the clouds and lowered its speed to below the speed of sound. Yi Chen only felt his vision brighten, and the mountains and rivers below were all imprinted in his eyes. But very quickly he was dumbfounded. In the area of 500 kilometers below, the mountain peaks rose and fell without end. Some were lofty and majestic, some were verdant and elegant, some were shaped like dragons, and some were crouching like tigers. The dense energy of heaven and earth converged into a thin layer of mist that coiled around the peaks of the mountain peaks, and it gave off a special feeling of immortality. Between the mountains were lakes of various sizes. Looking down from above, the smallest of the lakes was only the size of a fingernail. They were scattered all over the place, and they were of various colors. At a glance, it was impossible to tell how many there were. In the center of this area, dozens of precipitous mountain peaks converged to form a valley. The color of the valley was dark green, like the primordial jadeite formed by heaven and earth, exquisite without losing its grandeur. Looking inside, there were hundreds of lakes of various sizes in the valley. Buildings were built around the lakes in an orderly fashion, contrasting with the environment outside the valley, forming a large and a small scene. "What a wonderful place!" Yi-Chen opened his mouth and spat out these words. Luo Hanzhan explained to Yi-Chen, "There are a total of 1,332 mountains and 9,800 lakes around the Emerald Martial Palace, which is known as the 1,000 Mountains and 10,000 Rivers. Apart from this, on the mountains that form the Emerald Martial Palace, there is a kind of stone called fragrant jade, which emits a nice aroma all year round, and is called jade fragrance. Combining these two, it becomes the famous 1,000 Mountains and 10,000 Rivers, jade fragrance. Once the martial artists from the Windy Nation and even other nations mention this name, they will definitely think of the Rank 7 martial institution, the Emerald Martial Palace. Yi-Chen praised, "Thousands of mountains and tens of thousands of rivers, jadeite fragrance lingers, it really makes one daydream." The head elder snorted coldly and said, "It is indeed a paradise, but the Emerald Martial Palace is only a latecomer. 3,000 years ago, the Rank 6 martial institution, Mountain and Water Pavilion, used to occupy this place." That's right. Back then, the Emerald Martial Palace was just a small, unranked martial institution. The first leader of the Emerald Martial Palace accidentally found the ruins of the Mountain and Water Pavilion, and found the incomplete, great art of mountain and water from there. He trained hard for more than 10 years, and once he was born, he became famous in the martial world, and built a solid foundation for the Emerald Martial Palace. The fourth elder's voice was filled with envy and passion. It was a remnant of the great art of landscape. It seemed to be very powerful. Yi-Chen thought. The wind vulture flew over thousands of mountains and rivers, arriving at the entrance of the Emerald Valley. The entrance of the valley had a radius of hundreds of zhang, and the terrain was flat. Quite a few famous warriors had entered the valley in groups, and some important ones had also come on the back of their beasts, just like the Sky Cloud Martial School. But of course, the mounts of their beasts were obviously not as good as the wind vultures. The wind vulture landed on the ground along with a fierce gale. An outer elder of the Emerald Martial Palace walked up to them with 4 deacons. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for not going out to greet you." The head elder let the wind vulture move freely, then grinned and said, "It seems that we've arrived first. Haha, the Sky Cloud Martial School has been very high profile recently. You're number 1 in everything, but what's the point of fighting for number 1 in small matters?" The double-headed giant bat flew over quickly, and the middle-aged man in the lead opened his mouth and said. The fourth elder's face was filled with displeasure. The middle-aged man's name was Zhu Li, and he was about the same age as the first elder. Because he practiced a special cultivation technique, he looked to be in his 40s, and his qi and blood were vigorous. Taking a deep breath, the fourth elder raised his voice and said, "I didn't believe it at first. It turns out that people from the Purple Sun Martial House all have loud voices. I heard your roar from tens of miles away. Having a loud voice isn't a bad thing. I'm just afraid that some people don't have the energy to shout loudly." The two-headed bat landed on the ground. Julie took the lead and walked down. Look, the Sky Cloud Martial School and the Purple Sun Martial School are arguing again. Among the top 5 martial institutions, the Purple Sun Martial School and the Sky Cloud Martial School have the most grievances. I heard that when the Sky Cloud Martial School was encircling the remaining forces of the 9 evil cult, the Purple Sun Martial School set up a trap for the Sky Cloud Martial School, causing a lot of powerful martial artists of the Sky Cloud Martial School to suffer heavy casualties. After a few years, the Sky Cloud Martial School was reduced to a rank 9 martial institution. However, the Sky Cloud Martial School was not a force to be trifled with. They released fake news and tricked the previous leader of the Purple Sun Martial School to the place where the remaining forces of the 9 evil cult gathered, causing him to die without a complete corpse. There's such a secret. No wonder the 2 forces have always been like fire and water. Many people nearby were discussing in low voices. Normally, people from the Emerald Martial Palace would be happy to see the 2 forces fighting each other to the death. However, this was the territory of the Emerald Martial Palace, and tomorrow was the celebration banquet. If they really let them fight, the Emerald Martial Palace would lose all of its face. A few outer elders of the Emerald Martial Palace hurriedly said, "Your accommodations have been prepared, please follow us." Zhu Li flicked his sleeves and left. Ouyang Ming, who was behind him, threw a meaningful glance at Yi Chen. On the other side, the head elder's anger disappeared. He said to Yi Chen and the others, "Let's go." After the 2 groups of people had left, it suddenly started raining. The black-scaled beast carried the people from the Rudra Martial School to this place. Inside the Emerald Martial Palace, numerous lakes appeared in front of them, all calm and peaceful. The Emerald Martial Palace is indeed a rank 7 martial institution. It is indeed a beautiful place. Wow, compared to this place, my place is like a mountain, totally not at the same level. The lotuses in the lake are all precious herbs, the green lotus. And those fishes, they are all rare ancient fishes. Hearing people's praises, Yi Chen had to admit that in terms of environment, the windy mountain of the Sky Cloud Martial School was miles ahead of the Emerald Martial Palace. It was not even worth mentioning. He wondered how the environment of the North Snow Martial Academy, which was also a rank 7 martial institution, would be. There were many people who came to congratulate the Emerald Martial Palace. Those who did not have much influence were basically arranged to stay near the lakes in the outer area of the Emerald Martial Palace, where there were many beautiful courtyards. Those who had some influence were arranged to stay in the inner area, where the environment was much better. As one of the top 5 martial institutions, the Sky Cloud Martial School was arranged to stay in the innermost area, which was close to the main buildings of the Emerald Martial Palace. On the road between the lakes, Yi Chen inadvertently glanced over, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. In front of him, a group of young men and women in green robes were talking and laughing. Judging from the Zhen Qi vibration, they were not any weaker than the top-ranked inner disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. 2 of them were releasing immeasurable Zhen Qi, which meant that they had obviously reached the level of the top-ranked core disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The one on the left had a graceful figure and an extremely beautiful appearance, like an orchid in a deserted valley. Her every move attracted the thoughts of the male disciples. Standing next to her was a tall and straight male disciple. He was handsome and had a noble temperament. There was a faint aura of a king on his body. He was obviously not an ordinary person. Luo Hanzhan, who was standing beside Yi Chen, recognized the beautiful girl. She was Ji Shuyan, who had accompanied the Palm End Lu Wuxiang to visit the Sky Cloud Martial School half a year ago. She was a disciple of the Ji family, and judging from what had happened that day, she seemed to be closely related to Yi Chen. "Brother Yi, we have arrived at our place, let's go." Luo Hanzhan patted on Yi Chen's shoulder. Yi Chen took back his sight, his expression didn't change at all. Led by an outer elder of the Emerald Martial Palace, the 5 of them walked towards the luxurious yard beside the huge lake. From afar, Ji Shuyan saw that familiar silhouette and slightly frowned. The tall and handsome male disciple standing beside her asked with concern, "Sister Ji, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Brother sure." Ji Shuyan was sure that that man was Yi Chen. She didn't expect that after half a year, he, who was only at mortal realm stage 6, had already reached such a high level. If that was all, she wouldn't have been too surprised. But what she didn't expect was that besides the rapid improvement of his cultivation, he had also mastered the half-step sword intent, which was the dream of every sword artist. In just a couple of days, the name Yi Chen had spread across the entire Windy Nation. Among all the martial artists, there wasn't a single person who didn't know about him. His fame had even caught up with the top and second disciples of all the top martial institutions. Chapter 122. The luxurious yard was called the Green Willow House. It had a main yard and 7 small yards. Yi Chen lived in the small yard on the east side. Obviously, the yard had been thoroughly cleaned. There was not a single leaf on the ground, the corners were clean, and the flowers in the small garden in the middle had also been carefully trimmed. Entering the room, Yi Chen saw that the tables and chairs were all shiny and clean, and had a faint aroma. After looking around for a while, Yi Chen walked out. When he walked past Su Jing's yard, he heard a thunderous sound coming from inside. Yi Chen smiled. Su Jing had always been a quiet girl. She would only cultivate when she had nothing to do. She rarely took the initiative to communicate with others. After their last meeting, Su Jing only nodded to greet Yi Chen. Without disturbing her, Yi Chen started to walk away. Outside the yard was a sparkling lake. Every 100 meters around the lake, there was a yard that was as luxurious as the Green Willow House. Beside the lake, rows of willows were planted. The willows were touching the water surface, swaying along with the breeze. The Emerald Martial Palace is indeed a rank 7 institution. Even the place they use to receive their guests is so beautiful. Yi Chen took a deep breath. He felt that the natural yuan qi around him was much richer and purer than in the Windy Mountain. It was also easier to convert it into zhen qi. After enjoying the view for a while, Yi Chen was about to go back to his yard to cultivate. Yi Chen. A tall girl walked towards him along the lake. It was Yuan Shumei from the Rudra Martial School. Yi Chen smiled. "Long time no see. How did you know I was here?" "Guests from influential institutions all live beside this lake. I saw you when I walked out of the yard." Yuan Shumei stopped 3 meters in front of Yi Chen. Yi Chen nodded, then suddenly said in surprise, "You have reached the late condensing reality realm. Congratulations." "There's nothing to congratulate me about. You, on the other hand, have improved a bit too fast. Not only have you reached the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm in just a few months, you have also managed to comprehend the half-step sword intent, which even I am jealous of." "Sigh, comparisons are always odious," Yuan Shumei said with admiration and admiration. Yi Chen rubbed his nose. "The news travels fast." "Of course." Yuan Shumei rolled her eyes at Yi Chen and said, "Everything else is fine, but the fact that you've already comprehended the half-step sword intent is way too shocking. Even the leader of our Rudra Martial School had praised you as a top genius, a rare sword artist from the Windy Nation, and that you have a great chance to comprehend the true sword intent. You didn't call me just to praise me, did you?" Hearing him, Yuan Shumei looked at Yi Chen with hope and said, "How did you master the half-step sword intent? Do you have any experience to share with me?" Just like Yi Chen, she was the #1 inner disciple of the Rudra Martial School. Her fighting power was no weaker than ordinary core disciples. If she could master a little bit of the sword intent, her power would definitely increase. Besides, if she could master a little bit of the sword intent, it would be much easier for her to step into the next level. Originally, she didn't have any plans, but the person who was closest to mastering the sword intent was Yi Chen. So it was better to ask him than to try and figure it out herself. Yi Chen smiled bitterly in his mind. So she came here for the sword intent. I don't really know much about the sword intent, but if you want to talk about experience, I do have some. Tell me about it. Yuan Shuimei's eyes lit up. Yi Chen said, the spirit, qi, and soul are perfectly merged into one point under the control of nature, and then released in the form of a sword. I think this should be the initial form of the sword intent. Of course, Yi Chen wouldn't say too much. In his words, there were not only the ancient explanations, but also his own thoughts. All in all, it was ambiguous and mysterious. Yuan Shuimei was lost in her thoughts. After a long while, she came back to her senses and said with a happy face, "Thank you so much. I can feel that the sword intent has become much clearer in my mind. Maybe I can really figure it out. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about this." Even if Yi Chen didn't care about it, she wouldn't say it out loud. Everyone was selfish. If one less person could master the sword intent, they would feel superior. Yi Chen was surprised. Is it really that easy to understand? However, what he did not know was that the true spirit continent was full of martial arts, and there were a lot of things that were hard to understand. Compared to that, what he said was already very easy to understand. At least, for Yuan Shuimei, Yi Chen was already a powerful person in her heart. I can't take advantage of you for nothing. This is a sword manual, I found it by accident. Although it's very ordinary and doesn't have much value, it can be used as a guide for sword artists. Yuan Shuimei took out a thin book from her storage ring and handed it to Yi Chen. Yi Chen took it and took a look. On the cover of the book, there were 2 ancient characters, Sword Manual. Alright, I'll go back and try to understand it. Yuan Shuimei immediately said goodbye. She was afraid that if she stayed here for too long, that trace of understanding would disappear. Watching Yuan Shuimei's back as she left, Yi Chen put away the sword manual and went back to the Green Willow House. Deep inside the main building of the Emerald Martial Palace, next to a crescent-shaped lake. The courtyard here was different from other places. It was tall, large, and magnificent. It was built with precious stones and covered a large area. Sister Ji, don't you want to come in and have a seat? Outside the courtyard, a male disciple with a noble aura asked Ji Shuyan to stay. Ji Shuyan shook her head and said, "No, Brother Shi, I'll go first." After saying that, she turned around and left. The male disciple, who was called Brother Shi, had a bad look on his face. He punched a huge hole in the thick wall of the courtyard without using any Jin Qi. "Brother Shi, I'm Cui Shiming." At this moment, footsteps came from behind. The male disciple with a noble aura turned around, frowned and said, "What are you doing here?" It was Cui Shiming, who was 17 or 18 years old, and was quite handsome. He was the one who had lost to Yi Chen before. He forced a smile. He was a bit scared of the man in front of him. This man was not an ordinary core disciple. He was one of the top 4 core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace, the Stone Man Shirpatian. He was as powerful as the extreme Palm Lu Wuxiang, and was only second to the young Master Emerald, who had already stepped into the clasping Yuan realm. "Brother Shi, are you interested in Ji Shuyan?" Cui Shiming smiled and asked. Shi Potion's face darkened. "Don't get involved in things that you shouldn't get involved in. Otherwise, don't blame me for being cruel." Cui Shiming hurriedly said, "Brother Shi, you misunderstood me. Why would I get involved in your business? I wouldn't dare to do that." "Then what do you mean?" "Brother Shi, do you know about Yi Chen?" "I do. Isn't he the famous Sky Cloud Martial School disciple who has comprehended the half-step sword intent? What does he have to do with him?" Cui Shiming said in a low voice, "Brother Shi, you still don't know about it, do you? The one who was engaged to Ji Shuyan is Yi Chen." "It's him." Shirpatian indeed knew that Ji Shuyan was engaged to Yi Chen, but it was cancelled later. However, he didn't know who it was. Indeed, Yi Chen is the one who was engaged to Ji Shuyan. Back then, he was still a useless cultivator, and was not even noticed by Ji Shuyan. But now, that useless cultivator has become a genius who has comprehended the half-step sword intent. It's hard to say that Ji Shuyan won't be interested in him. Chapter 123. Hearing him, Shi Patian recalled that 2 hours ago, Ji Shuyan's expression had obviously changed. She must have seen that disciple from the Sky Cloud Martial School named Yi Chen. Thinking about the fact that these two used to be engaged, Shi Patian could not help but feel jealous and angry. The woman he loved would never be allowed to have any relationship with anyone else, even if that relationship was no longer there. He would still be very unhappy. This Yi Chen, he needed to teach him a lesson. Looking at Cui Shiming, Shi Patian asked, "Do you have a grudge against Yi Chen?" Cui Shiming's face showed a ferocious expression. "This guy is evil and cunning. He defeated me and made me lose face in front of my junior sister Yi Xian." He had liked Yi Xian for a long time. Their relationship was quite good before, but ever since he had been beaten by Yi Chen, she would only greet him coldly whenever she saw him, which was a huge blow to his self-esteem. He wished he could go back in time and kill Yi Chen until there was nothing left of him. Shi Patian sneered. Obviously, Yi Xian wasn't telling the truth, but he didn't want to expose him. "You can leave now," Shi Patian said. Cui Shiming was confused. "Brother Shi, are we just going to let him go like this?" "Let him go? Dream on. Tomorrow, during the celebration banquet, the disciples of the major sects will compare notes with each other. At that time, I will challenge him and make him lose face in front of everyone. It would be best if I can make him lose his mind. In this way, I can justifiably cripple him." If it was possible, Shi Patian wanted to kill Yi Chen right now. With his power, he could still do it. The so-called half-step sword intent was not even worth mentioning in front of absolute power. Cui Shiming was startled by Shi Patian's tone. He thought about all the people who had gone against him in the past, who were either killed or crippled, unable to continue their cultivation for the rest of their lives. Cui Shiming could not help but feel happy. "Yi Chen, if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too famous and making me lose face in front of Sister Yi Xian. Once you become a cripple, I will treat you well." After Cui Shiming left, Shi Patian murmured to himself, "Junior Sister Ji, I will let you know that a loser will always be a loser. Even if you have comprehended the half-step sword intent, you are still a loser in front of me." Humph! The night came and the stars shone brightly. Every big and small lake in the Emerald Martial Palace was reflecting a bright moon. Beside the bright moon were many lotus clouds, high up in the sky. In the middle of Green Willow House, Yi Chen turned on the crystal light in the room and was reading the sword scripture. The sword scripture was not a secret book. It talked about the ancient swordsman's understanding of sword principles. Some of the theories were very shallow, and some were very profound. Just a word or two was enough to make people ponder endlessly. Some didn't talk about sword arts, but about mentality. What mentality could make people enter the best state, and what mentality could make people have a chance to break through the shackles of sword arts. There were even some descriptions of sword will, but it was very mysterious. Good book. Yi Chen couldn't help but praise. Although this sword scripture couldn't directly improve one's fighting ability and sword art, it could help a swordsman gain a lot of theoretical knowledge. Theoretical knowledge should never be underestimated. For a martial artist, he might be able to become a powerful warrior without any theoretical knowledge, but he would never be able to become a great master. A great master would need to have a huge knowledge base. Only in this way he would be able to learn from hundreds of different schools of thought and create his own path and theory. As he immersed himself in the contents of the sword scripture, Yi Chen gradually forgot about the time. Outside the yard, the moonlight was like water, and the stars were shining brightly. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew over from afar, stirring up a part of the lake. The head elder and the others, who were resting, were all confused. Just now they had sensed that there was a sharp chi flashing past, but when they tried to sense it carefully, they couldn't find anything. It was like it was just an illusion. Su Jing, who was meditating, opened her eyes. She subconsciously thought of Yi Chen, then closed her eyes and ignored him. There were only 13 pages in the sword scripture. Although Yi Chen had read it very carefully, he still finished it in less than half an hour. After waking up from his meditation, Yi Chen felt that his mind had become much clearer. Holding the hilt of the hidden cloud sword in his hand, Yi Chen could feel it even more clearly. He felt like something obscure was about to burst out from the bottom of his heart, which was extremely mysterious. It was the sword intent. After thinking for a while, Yi Chen found that his half-step sword intent had become even more solid. At his level, he had already reached a bottleneck, and breaking through it was not something that could be done in a day or two. He had to spend a long time to polish the sharpness of his sword intent. On the contrary, even if there was only a slight improvement, he would be able to clearly sense it. If it was the half-step sword intent before, then now it was a step further from the half-step sword intent. There was only a thin layer of thin gauze between the half-step sword intent and the real sword intent. As long as there was a slight breeze, the gauze would be lifted, and the essence of the sword intent would emerge in his heart. Letting out a long breath, Yi Chen murmured to himself, "I did not expect that a normal sword spell could be so useful. It saved me a lot of time to train, and with just a little bit of comprehension, I will be able to master the sword intent in no time. I really have to thank you for this, Yuan Xuemei." At this moment, if Yuan Xuemei knew that Yi Chen had gained a lot from the sword scripture, she would definitely be stunned. She had been studying this sword scripture for a long time, but she couldn't find anything special about it. At most, it had made her fighting style more practical. Standing up, Yi Chen opened the window and looked at the moonlight for a while. After a while, when he had calmed down, Yi Chen closed the window and started his daily Zhen Qi training. Nothing happened that night. The next morning, the lake was shrouded in a thin layer of mist, which looked pure and holy. The quiet Emerald Martial Palace gradually became lively, filled with people's voices. Some of the leaders of the big forces who couldn't make it to the Sky Cloud Martial School yesterday had also arrived. The scene was 10 times more spectacular than the inner disciple ranking competition of the Sky Cloud Martial School. After all, young Master Emerald had stepped into the Clasping Yuan realm, which was not something a small inner disciple ranking competition could compare with. If everything went well, in the next 10 years, young Master Emerald would definitely become the pillar of the Emerald Martial Palace, and his fame would definitely not be any less than the leaders of the top 5 martial institutions. During the celebration banquet, the most outstanding disciples from the top martial institutions will definitely compete with each other. At that time, we will be able to watch the top geniuses of the Windy Nation fight. Unfortunately, those top disciples won't come, otherwise it would be a grand occasion. It's already very good. People like North Snow Fast Blade Lynch and Stoneman Sherpatian are basically as powerful as young Master North Snow and young Master Duanmu. Only young Master Emerald, who has stepped into the Clasping Yuan realm, is more powerful than the others. That's right, it's really scary. In the Emerald Martial Palace, it's already quite good to have one genius at the child level. In addition to young Master Emerald, the Absolute Palm Lu Wuxiang and the Stoneman Sherpatian are both at this level. Plus the Traceless Snow Ji Shuyan, who has recently emerged, there are 3 of them in total. Yeah, the Emerald Martial Palace has never been short of top geniuses. Although Lu Wuxiang and Sherpatian are listed in the second group of young generation in the Windy Nation, everyone knows that they are definitely the top of the second group. They are almost as powerful as young Master Duanmu and young Master North Snow. On the road between the lakes, some people who had just arrived were discussing with each other. Chapter 124. In the Green Willow House, after washing up, Yi Chen came to the main yard of the head elder's residence. In the yard, Luo Hanshan and Su Jing were already waiting there. After a while, The head elder and the fourth elder walked out of the hall. The head elder glanced at the three of them and said, "Let's go." On the way, the head elder reminded Yi Chen, "Don't let your emotions get the better of you during the competition. Remember, you are representing the entire Sky Cloud Martial School, not just yourself." "I know." Yi Chen nodded. Luo Hanshan, who was standing beside him, grinned and said, "Unless someone is trying to hurt you, nothing too embarrassing will happen. Besides, Su Jing and I will stand in front of you." The current Luo Hanshan was different from half a year ago. Back then, he had just regained his title as a genius, and couldn't wait to prove himself. Therefore, he agreed to fight against the palm master Lu Wuxiang without hesitation. But now, Luo Hanshan was friendly and calm, giving people a sense of confidence. "Hanshan, I know that you have made great progress in the past half a year, but don't underestimate Lu Wuxiang and Sherpatian, they are not simple people." The fourth elder interrupted. Luo Hanshan responded, "Don't worry, fourth elder, I know what I'm doing." There was a large river between the main buildings of the Emerald Martial Palace and the outside world. Over the river, there were 3 magnificent stone bridges, each of which was 33 zhang long and 15 zhang wide, which could allow 10 horses to cross side by side without feeling crowded at all. At the moment, people were moving on the stone bridges, heading towards the main buildings. After crossing the bridge, an outer elder of the Emerald Martial Palace walked up to them. "My friends, the celebration will be held in the Baohua Square, please follow me." The head elder nodded and followed behind the elder. After a while, the Baohua Square appeared in front of them. The square, which was hundreds of zhang wide, was entirely white with a hint of cyan, shining with a faint light, as if it was made from a giant piece of jade. It looked magnificent and noble. Seats had already been arranged on the square, and a third of the people had already taken their seats, while the rest of the people kept coming. "This way, please." The outer elder of the Emerald Martial Palace led them to the second seat on the right-hand side of the main seat. The first seat was for the Rudra Martial School, and opposite to them were the North Snow Martial Academy and the Purple Sun Martial School. Judging from this, the Sky Cloud Martial School was ranked last among the top 5 martial institutions. The Great Elder didn't think much of it. He nodded and sat down. The fourth elder, Yi Chen, and the others took their seat. Turning his head, Yi Chen saw Yuan Shumei, who was smiling at him with a bright and beautiful smile. Looking at the other side, Ouyang Ming, who was tall and sturdy, first looked at Luo Hanshan with a scornful smile, then looked at Yi Chen with an even more scornful look. "Second brother, was that young Master Hanshan, Luo Hanshan, really that powerful?" The ugly teenager sitting next to Ouyang Ming asked. Ouyang Ming responded plainly, "Why are you bringing up the past? How could he be as powerful as a young master now? Young Master Hanshan has already become a joke. I think the Windy Nation should re-rank the top 4 young masters. Get rid of young Master Emerald, who is not at the same level as us, and kick out young Master Hanshan, then there will still be 2 places left for the top 4 young masters. Eldest brother and second brother should be able to make it on the list. I have already thought of the names. Eldest brother will be called Young Master Ben Lei, and second brother, you will be called Young Master Godly Legs." The ugly teenager was very talkative and said flatteringly. Ouyang Ming paused for a second. Young Master Godly Legs was not a bad name. Suddenly, his face turned serious. He pretended to be angry and said, "Don't talk nonsense, I don't deserve to be called a young master." The ugly teenager noticed Ouyang Ming's expression. He knew that Ouyang Ming wasn't angry at all, so he immediately added fuel to the fire. "I am telling the truth, second brother, it's just that you became famous a little bit later. If you beat young Master Hanshan today, you will definitely become one of the top 4 young masters." "Young Master Hanshan, I will beat him, I hope he can make me serious." Ouyang Ming squinted his eyes. On the other side, Yi Chen sneered in his mind. With his powerful soul power, he had heard their conversation clearly. This Ouyang Ming and the ugly teenager were indeed arrogant. Not to mention young Master Hans Han, even the North Snow Fast Blade Lynch from the North Snow Martial Academy was not that easy to deal with. When the red sun rose from the east, almost all the seats on the square were occupied, only the people from the Emerald Martial Palace, who were the hosts, had not arrived yet. After a while, the door of the palace on top of the Baohua Square suddenly opened, and a group of people walked out. The man in the lead was about 40 years old. He was handsome, with a long beard on his chin. He didn't look aggressive at all, instead, he looked more gentle and elegant, like a middle-aged scholar who had read a lot of books. He gave people a perfect first impression. "Leader Zhuang, how have you been?" "Leader Zhuang, congratulations." Down below, all the leaders of the big parties stood up and cupped their fists. The middle-aged man had a big smile on his face. He waved his hand and signaled everyone to sit down. He had an indescribable aura around him. Who else could it be other than the leader of the Emerald Martial Palace, Zhuang Qingxian? Yi Chen slightly frowned. He didn't know why, but when he saw the middle-aged man, the image of Yu Buchuan from the wuxia novels flashed across his mind. On both sides of Zhuang Qingxian were 8 inner elders. Each of them had a powerful and immeasurable aura, almost as powerful as the head elder, and the 2 in the front were even more powerful than the head elder. Behind them were the 3 core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace, Lu Wuxiang with a cold face, Shi Patian with a noble temperament, and Ji Shuiyan with a beautiful face. The last one was a male disciple with extremely white skin, who was even more handsome than a girl, and who had a pair of green eyes that flashed with an evil light. As the people from the Emerald Martial Palace sat down, Zhuang Qingxian said with a loud voice, "Today is my son Zhuang Fei's birthday celebration. Thank you all for coming all the way to the Emerald Martial Palace, it is my honor." "Leader Zhuang, what are you talking about? You have already given us face by inviting us here." "That's right, the Emerald Martial Palace is the #1 martial institution in the Windy Nation, how could we not come? The celebration is about to start, why hasn't your son shown up yet?" Zhuang Qingxian smiled. He was very satisfied with the atmosphere. After today, the Emerald Martial Palace's dominant position would be even more unshakable, and they would completely dominate the other 4 martial institutions. "Everyone, please wait for a moment, my son will be here soon." As soon as Zhuang Qingxian's voice faded, a young man walked out of the palace. As if he was affected by an invisible force field, everyone's eyes were focused on him. The young man was about 18 or 19 years old. He had a jade-like face, and a pair of eyes that looked like stars in the sky, shining brightly. He was tall and straight, wearing a green robe, which made him look noble and noble. Every step he took seemed to contain an inexhaustible magical power, which made everyone's heartbeat quicken. Seeing Luo Hanzhan, Lin Qi's eyes burst out with an amazing fighting intent, but he soon calmed down. In Ouyang Ming's eyes, besides the fighting intent, there was more jealousy and ambition, which made him clench his fists tightly. As for Luo Hanzhan, he seemed to be very calm. No one knew what he was thinking, only Yi Chen could clearly sense that he was slightly sighing. The young man's identity was obvious. He was indeed the most powerful young martial artist of the Windy Nation, the Emerald Young Master, Zhuang Fei. Chapter 125. Young Master Emerald. He is only at the early clasping Yuan realm, but he is giving people the pressure of a mid-clasping Yuan realm martial artist. His potential is limitless. A leader of a powerful party gasped. "Leader Wang, you haven't heard of him, right?" When young Master Emerald stepped into the clasping Yuan realm, he was ambushed by a mid-level ghost guard under the ghost artist's command, but was killed by him with a single palm attack. Mid-level ghost guard. Back then, the ghost artist was one of the 108 ghost warriors of the 9 ghost cult. His ghost guards were invincible, and all of them were elites among elites. To become a mid-level ghost guard, one had to be at least at the peak of early clasping Yuan realm. The higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to kill someone with a higher cultivation. When a martial artist was at the mortal realm, it was not difficult to kill someone with a higher cultivation, and when a martial artist reached the condensing reality realm, it was not difficult to kill someone with a higher cultivation. However, once a martial artist reached the clasping yuan realm, killing someone with a higher cultivation would be quite difficult. Not to mention that those who could become mid-level ghost guards were all elites, and they could also kill people with a higher cultivation. Hearing this, the crowd looked at young Master Emerald in a different light. Most of them were at the mid-clasping yuan realm, and only a few of them had reached the late clasping yuan realm. In other words, most of them did not have the confidence to fight against young Master Emerald. Young Master Emerald glanced at the crowd, and his eyes stopped on Luo Hanzhan for a second, then he said, "Thank you all for coming to the celebration banquet. Zhuang Fei is deeply honored. In order to show the sincerity of the Emerald Martial Palace, there will be many wonderful performances today. I believe it will make you all happy." After saying some more appropriate words, young Master Emerald stepped back and gave the right to speak to the leader of the Emerald Martial Palace, Zhuang Qingxian. Zhuang Qingxian walked to the front and said with a loud voice, "Without further ado, let the celebration banquet begin." Immediately, the sound of musical instruments came from all around, including drums, flutes, and zither, which made the atmosphere on the stage even more relaxed. Soon, beautiful maids brought breakfast and tea to the crowd. After the tea, the performance officially began. The first performance was called Candle Blowing. A short middle-aged man, who was at the early condensing reality realm, walked on the stage. He placed 13 candles on the ground in an S-shape, then stepped back for 10 steps and slowly circulated his qi. It was the first time for the crowd to see this kind of performance, so they all showed some interest. "Who?" The stocky middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of white gas. The white gas was like a dart, and it easily extinguished the first candle. Then, it bent to the side and extinguished the second candle, the third candle. When the 13th candle was extinguished, thunderous applause rang out. "Good, wonderful!" It is quite rare for an early condensing reality realm warrior to be able to do this. Normally, the breath that came out of one's mouth would travel in a straight line and would never bend. Although clasping yuan realm warriors could do that, which clasping yuan realm warrior would want to show his face and perform on the stage? Plus, a performance was a performance after all, and it would be meaningless if a powerful warrior went on the stage. Yi Chen applauded softly. It was indeed marvelous. The other party should have cultivated a cultivation art that allowed him to maintain his aura. After a long period of training, it would not be difficult for him to achieve this. The following performances became more and more exciting, and many people were attracted by them. There were also some people who chatted while watching the performances. If they were thirsty, there were all kinds of fruits on the table beside them. If they had any requests, they could ask the beautiful maidservant beside them. Before they knew it, it was already noon. The lunch was quite sumptuous. There were food that could fly in the sky, swim in the water, run in the mountains. As long as they could be found in the market, they could be found here, and even if they couldn't be found in the market, they could be found here. The wine was the Blue Sea 3 flavors, which cost 3,000 silvers per bottle, the top-grade wine of the Windy Nation. Taking a sip of the wine, Luo Hanzhan said, "After lunch, the real business is about to start. Don't be careless." The head elder only said 4 words. The 3 of them nodded. Su Jing suddenly said to Yi Chen, "Shirpatian and that Emerald Martial Palace disciple have been staring at you, be careful." Yi Chen said, "I know." He had been wondering why Shirpatian would look so fierce from time to time. Although he had hidden it very well, it still couldn't escape from Yi Chen's senses. The other person should be the number 1 inner disciple of the Emerald Martial Palace, and he was probably here to deal with Yi Chen. On the side, the 4th elder hadn't said anything, but he was actually more anxious than anyone else. Luo Hanzhan used to be one of the 4 young masters, but it was still unknown whether he was as powerful as a child now. He probably wouldn't be able to fight against the second-ranked disciples of the other martial institutions. He wasn't sure how powerful Su Jing was among the core disciples, but he only knew that the North Snow Fast Blade Lynch and the Stone Man Sherpatian were almost as powerful as a child. Fortunately, the Sky Cloud Martial School still had Yi Chen. Although he was still not powerful enough, as long as he didn't lose too badly, with his half-step sword intent, he would be able to save a lot of face. Thinking of this, the fourth elder glanced at Yi Chen expectantly. A fiery sun was shining in the sky, sprinkling down thousands of golden beams of light. In the Baohua Square, everyone's faces were filled with expectation, waiting for the next performance. Zhuang Qingxian cleared his throat and said with a smile, "I think you all know what's going to happen next. Yes, it's going to be a competition between the disciples of the top martial institutions and other powerful forces. You can't kill your opponent. If anyone dares to violate this rule, I, Zhuang Qingxian, will have to teach you a lesson on behalf of your martial institutions. Also, the competition has to be consensual. If your opponent doesn't want to fight, you can't force him. Of course, I personally hope that everyone can participate. Leader Zhuang, we've been waiting for this moment, let's start. Leader Zhuang, time waits for no man, let's have a good show as soon as possible." Seeing some people showing an impatient look, Zhuang Qingxian smiled and said, "All right. The competition has officially started. Who wants to be the first one on the stage?" The ugly teenager from the Purple Sun Martial House stood up, walked to the stage and made a fist and palm salute. "I am Zhang Qing, a core disciple of the Purple Sun Martial House. I want to challenge the core disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial House, Su Jing. Su Jing, do you dare to fight with me?" The ugly teenager Zhang Qing had a cousin named Zhao Guo. During a mission, he had a conflict with Su Jing and was severely injured by her. This made the other disciples of the Purple Sun Martial House angry. After all, they rarely suffered losses, and Zhao Guo was one of the top 10 inner disciples. They could not accept that. After that, as long as there was a chance, the powerful disciples of the Purple Sun Martial House would try to find trouble with Su Jing. However, they did not expect her to be so powerful. None of the inner disciples were her opponents, and those who tried to find trouble with her were all severely injured and humiliated. Now that there was a chance, Zhang Qing wanted to teach Su Jing a lesson on behalf of the Purple Sun Martial House and his cousin. Why not? Su Jing, who was dressed in white, stood up and walked up slowly. Zhuang Qingxian said, "All right, the two of you should try your best to control yourselves. You don't have to win or lose." Then, he took a step back and sat on the wide chair behind him. Chapter 126. In the middle of the Baohua Plaza, Su Jing and Zhang Qing stood 30 steps away from each other. "Although it is just a competition, I will not hold back. I hope you can last a little longer." A dim light flashed on the surface of the storage ring, and a huge purple sword appeared in Zhang Qing's hand. This sword was half the length of a human, and its body was wide and thick. It looked quite heavy. Su Jing was barehanded, she did not have any weapons, she said coldly. 10 attacks is more than enough to take care of you. Zhang Qing's expression froze. He laughed with a deep voice. "All right, then I would like to see how you are going to beat me within 10 attacks. Don't cut your own tongue." Cut. Just as he finished talking, Zhang Qing held the sword with both of his hands and raised it high. Beams of purple and red light gathered on the tip of the sword, and he instantly threw it towards Su Jing. Shoo! 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 3 burning sword lights shot out, and even the air was melted. Su Jing was expressionless, but a huge fire halo appeared behind her head, shining brightly. With the help of the halo, Su Jing's aura suddenly increased, and she threw out 3 punches in a row towards the incoming sword light. Crack! Crackle! Like a popping sound, the sword light was shattered into pieces by Zhang Qing's fist power before it could even get close to Su Jing's body. Go down. Zhang Qing obviously did not expect 3 sword lights to be able to beat Su Jing. If he really could, then it would be too boring. As soon as Su Jing shattered the sword light, Zhang Qing took a step forward, turned into a shadow, and attacked towards Su Jing in an awkward way. The heavy sword body tore through the air, making a shrill sound. It was not hard to imagine that even with the Zhen Qi layer, it would not be able to block out this sword attack. Chin. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Su Jing adjusted her posture and threw out a punch that was covered in a golden light. The huge sword in Zhang Qing's hand was almost blown away. He was shocked. Although the sword in his hand was not a low-rank great sword, it was still one of the top of the normal great swords. Combined with his powerful Zhen Qi, it still could not compete with his opponent's fist. What a joke! Piss off! After blowing away the huge sword with one punch, a solid golden light burst out from Su Jing's body. Puff puff puff. At the critical moment, Zhang Qing condensed 6 purplish-red Zhen Qi shields in front of him. There was 1 in the middle, and 5 around him, protecting him tightly. However, he had underestimated the impact of the golden light and was forced to retreat. Yi Chen smiled faintly. To be honest, he wasn't worried about Su Jing at all. At this moment she probably hadn't even used 60% of her strength, and the most terrifying thing about her was that she could use 60% of her strength to 80% or even 90%. Of course, Zhang Qing did not use his full strength. It was just that it would be very difficult for him to defeat Su Jing. What the hell is Zhang Qing doing? Why isn't he using his full strength? On the Ziyang Martial School's side, Ouyang Ming, who was sitting on a chair, frowned. A few cracks appeared on the hard ground of the Baohua Square. Zhang Qing stopped and said in a low voice, "You are qualified enough for me to use my full power." After Zhang Qing finished speaking, a purplish-red light rose from his body. The light was like an inextinguishable flame, burning brighter and brighter. Finally, it flowed along Zhang Qing's hands and merged into the big sword, causing the whole big sword to be covered in flames. It was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. Purple Sun Sword Aura. As Zhang Qing swung his sword down, the purplish-red light transformed into a gigantic, illusory sword, which was tens of meters long and swung towards Su Jing. The gigantic illusory sword was way too powerful, it even sucked up all the air in front of it. A loud sonic boom shook the air on the square like water ripples. This sword attack is quite powerful, I think she is going to lose. On the Emerald Martial School's side, Shi Patian was sitting there calmly, with a faint smile on his face. Luo Han looked a bit worried. Zhang Qing's power was more or less out of his expectation, and this martial skill was not simple either. It was especially used to deal with warriors who liked to fight head-on. Unfortunately, Sister Su Jing was exactly this kind of warrior. Brother Luo, don't worry, Sister Su will win. For her, this is just an appetizer. Yi Chen said. Oh, I hope so. Luo Han didn't know why Yi Chen was so confident in Sister Su Jing, but he knew that it would be great if Sister Su Jing could win. Lose. Zhang Qing gathered all of his Zhen Qi into this sword attack. His face slightly blushed. Right at the moment when the sword attack was launched, Su Jing's eyes suddenly turned sharp. A burst of golden light burst forth, and another ring of flames condensed behind her head, trapping the first ring of flames within it. It was a ring within a ring. Luo Han shouted in a low voice, "The 8th level of the Golden Three-Realm Art." With the help of the 2 fiery halos, Su Jing's power increased by 30%, and the bright golden light had completely solidified, shooting straight up into the sky. Crack! She put her hands together, and the gigantic illusory sword was blocked by Su Jing, without moving even a little bit. As she suddenly shook it, the gigantic sword exploded, and Zhang Qing was sent flying backwards while vomiting blood. 3 moves, you're only at this level. Su Jing's face didn't even blush, and she didn't even gasp for breath. You! Zhang Qing crawled back up from the ground, and vomited another mouthful of blood. Zhuang Qingxian glanced at Su Jing in surprise, then raised his voice and said, "All right, the first round is over, who else wants to go?" Shi Patian stared at Yi Chen, and sent a message to the handsome teenager standing next to him. "Qing Jun, you go and try that Yi Chen. If he can't beat him, I'll have to do it myself." Originally, he wanted to do it himself, but after careful consideration, he felt that it was a bit inappropriate. Yi Chen had just become famous not long ago, and he wasn't even a true core disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School yet, while Shi Patian was already one of the top 4 core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace. Even if he beat Yi Chen, people would still gossip about him, which was not a good idea. Therefore, it would be better to let Qing Jun, who was also the number 1 inner disciple of the Emerald Martial Palace, go first. Although Qing Jun wasn't a core disciple yet, his fighting power could be ranked in the top 15 among the core disciples. If everything went well, it wouldn't be too hard for him to beat Yi Chen. Qing Jun, who was even more handsome than a girl, responded, "Brother Shi, he has only mastered the half-step sword intent. His power is very weak. There is no need for you to do it, I can beat him easily." Shi Patian nodded and said, "Remember, don't let him have an easy time. Don't worry, I have been cultivating the great natural splitting force. Once I do, I will make him lie on the bed for at least 10 days or half a month. As for stopping when the time is right, that's just for show. Do you really want to have a friendly competition? That would be too boring." Shi Patian slightly nodded, then looked at Yi Chen with a hideous smile on his face, and thought, "It seems that I don't have to do it anymore. Qing Jun alone is enough to disappoint you. Leader, I want to challenge Yi Chen of the Sky Cloud Martial School." Qing Jun stood up and walked up. Zhuang Qingxian laughed out loud and said, "Good, you are the number 1 inner disciple of the Emerald Martial Palace, and Yi Chen is the number 1 inner disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Yi Chen, do you dare to fight me?" Qing Jun looked at Yi Chen. Chapter 127. All of a sudden, everyone turned to look at Yi Chen. Those leaders who had been to the Sky Cloud Martial School to watch the inner disciple ranking competition all knew him, while those who had never been there were all talking about him. "He is that Yi Chen, he is so young. At such a young age, he has already mastered the half-step sword intent, how incredible! Once he masters the real sword intent, his potential will be as great as that of the Emerald Child. Unfortunately, he is still not there yet." Yeah, that Qing Jun, the number 1 inner disciple of the Emerald Martial Palace, has such a strong Zhen Qi vibration. He has obviously reached the peak of the late condensing reality realm. Since Zhuang Qingxian let him fight, he must be very powerful. Maybe he is already at the top of the core disciples. Top of the core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace, this is very valuable. Yi Chen should be able to win. Most of the people did not think highly of Yi Chen, but they were very optimistic about his future. After all, he was the first one among the young generation who had mastered the half-step sword intent. It was very likely that he would be able to master the real sword intent in the future. Slowly standing up, Yi Chen did not say anything and walked straight onto the stage. "You have mastered the half-step sword intent, not bad, but you have to remember, in this world, power is everything, no one cares about what you have actually mastered." Seeing Yi Chen walk onto the stage without hesitation, Qing Jun sneered, slightly raised his chin and looked down at Yi Chen. Yi Chen said calmly, "You are right, power is everything, you are barely enough to make me fight with all of my power. Don't be so arrogant, don't think that just because you are the number 1 inner disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, you are just an ordinary inner disciple in the Emerald Martial Palace." Qing Jun did not give any face to the head elder of the Sky Cloud Martial School. He tried his best to belittle the average level of the disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The head elder's face was filled with anger. The Emerald Martial Palace was getting more and more arrogant. Even a small inner disciple did not put the Sky Cloud Martial School in his eyes. In the past, they only talked behind their backs, but now, they said it right in front of him. The head elder snorted coldly. His voice contained a clasping Yuan realm zhenqi. Everyone could sense the head elder's anger. Zhuang Qingxian glanced at the head elder of the Sky Cloud Martial School and scolded Qing Jun. Everything will be judged by the public. How dare you judge it yourself? Although Qing Jun didn't sense Zhuang Qingxian's anger, he knew that he couldn't go overboard. He immediately cupped his fists towards the crowd and said, Qing Jun is a straightforward person. I've made a fool of myself. After that, his eyes turned sharp and he said to Yi Chen, whether what I said is true or not, let the results prove it. Buzz. The storage ring flickered with a dim light, and the hidden cloud sword appeared in Yi Chen's hand. He slowly unsheathed the sword and pointed it at Qing Jun. Yi Chen said coldly, if I can't defeat you within 5 movements, I lose. Everyone was shocked by his words. The head elder's face darkened. Before he came here, he had told Yi Chen not to act impulsively. In here, he was not only representing himself, but the entire Sky Cloud Martial School, and he had to think about the Sky Cloud Martial School first. How could he have completely forgotten about that? Defeating Qing Jun within 5 movements was not an easy task, and if he failed to do so, everyone would undoubtedly look down on him and think that he was a braggart. Luo Han couldn't help but say, Brother Yi, you are too impulsive. Not necessarily. Su Jing was a man of few words. The 4th elder gave a bitter smile and said, do you really think that Yi Chen can defeat Qing Jun within 5 movements? If I'm not wrong, this Qing Jun is at least one of the top core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace. Although I hate to admit it, judging only from the sense of power released from his body, he can be ranked in the top 7 or even the top 6 among all the core disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Besides some of the leaders, the young generation all shook their heads as well. They all thought that Yi Chen was too arrogant, especially Sherpa Tian. He sneered in his mind, it would have been better if Yi Chen hadn't said those words, but if he failed to do so, then he would have lost a lot of face. I can't believe that this Yi Chen is even more stupid and arrogant than I thought. Ouyang Ming sneered, reckless. On the Rudra Martial School side, Yuan Xuemei had long hated Qing Jun. She actually hoped that Yi Chen could defeat Qing Jun within 5 movements, although it was almost impossible. You are looking for death. Qing Jun's clothes started to flutter even though there was no wind. Beams of cyan and purple light burst out from his body. He moved his feet slightly, leaving cracks on the ground. His whole body shot out like a blade, his palm was as straight as a blade, and he threw out a palm attack. Swoosh! The air was sliced open, and a cyan and purple light blade shot out from his palm, attacking towards Yi Chen. Yi Chen did not step back, instead, his calm temperament suddenly turned sharp. Wave after wave of sword power burst out from his body. His whole body seemed to have turned into a cloud, a sword that was accumulating power, and was about to explode with an amazing destructive power. First movement. As he stabbed out with his sword, Yi Chen's whole body turned illusory. His sword power was not stable, and his figure was not stable either. He was like a floating cloud in the sky, and was not bound by his normal state. Crack! The cyan and purple light blade went through Yi Chen's illusory figure, leaving a deep crack on the ground. At the same time, Yi Chen's sword had already pierced towards Qing Jun's chest. What kind of sword art is this? Qing Jun was shocked. He didn't expect that Yi Chen's sword art and body movement would be so weird. He was about to hit his opponent, but he missed it by a hair's breadth. A trace of anger flashed past Qing Jun's face. He crazily activated his Zhen Qi. Natural purple crystal Qi. The cyan and purple light gathered together and condensed into a purple crystal-like shield in front of Qing Jun's chest. The shield was crystal clear and had 8 flat surfaces. The edges of the shield were emitting a faint halo, firmly protecting Qing Jun's body. As for the other parts of his body, They were also covered by a layer of purple crystal chi. Yi Chen didn't make any changes. He still stabbed out with his hidden cloud sword. The sword power contained a horrifying half-step sword intent, which made it even more condensed. Puff! The purple crystal shield was broken. It couldn't even block a little bit of Yi Chen's attack. What? The natural purple crystal chi was broken. Sure, Patian clenched his fist so hard that the teacup he had just picked up was smashed into pieces. The tea splashed everywhere. No wonder he was so shocked. The natural purple crystal chi was one of the natural great splitting force, which was a low-rank Earth Realm martial art from the Emerald Martial Palace. It was not weaker than Lu Wuxiang's blue murderous chi. In terms of destructive power, it was even more powerful. An ordinary late condensing reality realm martial artist might not be able to break the natural purple crystal chi even if he used all of his power. But now, it couldn't even block a single sword attack from Yi Chen. Young Master Emerald's expression slightly changed. The power of the half-step sword intent had really surprised him. "Piss off!" Qing Jun yelled out. The natural purple crystal chi around his body grew thicker and thicker once again. It slowed down the sword tip. After that, he raised his right hand and slapped towards Yi Chen's head. The strong wind blew Yi Chen's hair into the air. He also yelled out, "Dominate the world!" Boom! All of the surrounding Yuan Qi was sucked out and injected into Yi Chen's left fist. Yi Chen then threw out his fist with an unstoppable power, clashing against Qing Jun's palm attack. There was no expected loud bang, neither were there any broken bricks or people flying away. The black light and the cyan purple light were devouring each other, trying their best to fight against each other. Some of the weaker young warriors felt a bit uncomfortable. It was as if they knew that thunder was coming, but they could only see lightning bolts flashing across the sky, without any sound of thunder. It was both weird and depressing. Right at this moment, a thunderous boom finally broke out. The black light and cyan purple light scattered on the stage, shooting out in all directions. Such a strong chi power. The leaders of the powerful parties all made their move. They created a thick layer of chi wall in front of their own area, blocking the chi power from spreading and destroying the surrounding area. All of a sudden, the transparent chi wall started to ripple. The two of them separated right after they touched each other. Yi Chen was still in the air. He waved out a sword attack. Limitless Cloud. The thick sword chi was extremely powerful. Wherever it went, the air seemed to have been swept away. It then hacked towards Qing Jun along with a destructive power. Damn it! Qing Jun was extremely angry. He gathered all of his Zhen Qi into his right palm and threw it towards the sword Qi. Crackle! The Zhen Qi on the edge of his palm was completely broken. Qing Jun spat out a mouthful of blood. His meridians had been injured by the remaining sword Qi. Unbelievable! The two had only exchanged 3 attacks, and Qing Jun had already been injured. Was he really defeated in 5 attacks? Half-step sword intent is even more powerful than I had imagined. Luckily, it is not the real sword intent yet. Otherwise, Qing Jun would not have been able to handle the first attack. But there are still 2 more attacks left. Qing Jun should be able to handle it. If he couldn't handle it, then he would lose face. Before, he had been trying to belittle the average level of the Sky Cloud Martial School's disciples. But now, he has been defeated in 5 attacks. It is like being slapped in the face. Seeing Qing Jun being injured, everyone was shocked. Yi Chen, you want to defeat me in 5 attacks? In your dreams. I will make you regret it. Qing Jun's eyes were completely red. He forcibly activated his Zhen Qi and crushed the sword Qi that had invaded his body. Then, he walked towards Yi Chen step by step. With every step he took, the ground would crack, and the natural amethyst Qi around his body would increase by a bit. By the 7th step, the natural amethyst Qi had condensed into the shape of a sharp blade. At this moment, Qing Jun had already surpassed his own limit. He had forcibly pushed his natural splitting force, to the peak of the 8th level, and his Zhen Qi had condensed into the shape of a blade. Break. Facing Yi Chen, Qing Jun raised his right hand high and swung it forward. Swoosh. The side blade phantom followed Qing Jun's hand gesture and flew out, the aftershock cutting terrifying cracks on the surface of the square. The surrounding air was like water, with many wrinkles appearing, cut by the side blade phantom one by one, and then exploded into pieces, exploding into turbulence. The peak of the 8th level of the natural splitting force. I can definitely defeat him. Sure Potion's eyes were fixed on the square. He couldn't wait to see Yi Chen's body being smashed into pieces. Ouyang Ming sneered. Yi Chen, who had mastered the half-step sword intent, would be a threat sooner or later. It was a good thing that he had been defeated now. Su Jing and Luo Hanshan both frowned slightly. By now, she was no longer sure that Yi Chen would be able to defeat Qing Jun. After all, Qing Jun's breakthrough was way too sudden. No one had expected that the pressure and humiliation would actually help him break through. Compared to Yi Chen's luck was way too bad. Facing this horrifying attack, the Zhen Qi inside Yi Chen's body exploded on its own. Vaguely, there seemed to be an invisible barrier in the deepest part of his dantian being broken. The circulation speed of his Zhen Qi increased drastically, and the natural Yuan Qi poured into his body like a funnel. Right then, Yi Chen had also made a breakthrough just like Qing Jun. But the difference was that his cultivation had reached the late condensing reality realm. Feeling the powerful Zhen Qi circulating inside his body, Yi Chen raised his eyes. His sharp gaze was almost tangible, and it turned into an illusory sword qi that shot out, piercing everyone's eyes. Chapter 128. Lu Hanshan was shocked. Brother Yi has reached the late condensing reality realm? Lu Hanshan was already shocked when he heard that Qing Jun had already reached the peak of the 8th stage of the great natural splitting force. He felt that this kind of thing was very rare. Not every pressure could help a person make progress, otherwise, the whole true spirit realm would be in chaos, with people fighting each other to death every day. It could only be said that pressure could help a person make a breakthrough. However, he didn't expect that Yi Chen had also made a breakthrough, and it was a breakthrough in his cultivation, directly reaching the late condensing reality realm from the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm. Judging from the great Yuan Qi vibration, his late condensing reality realm cultivation seemed to be much more solid than ordinary people, and his Zhen Qi didn't seem to be unstable at all. Yi Chen took a step forward, along with which sharp airflows spread out in all directions. It was as if Yi Chen's entire body had been merged with the eye of a storm, and a shocking sword aura rose into the sky. He held the sword with one hand and simply swung it down. My sword! What's going on? Why did my sword come out of the sheath by itself? There were many inner disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace on the scene, and many of them had swords with them. However, at this moment, their swords flew out of their sheaths uncontrollably, attacking towards Qing Jun along with Yi Chen's sword aura. A few of them were relatively powerful, and managed to grab onto their swords in time. However, no matter how hard they tried to activate their Zhen Qi, their swords still couldn't stop shaking. One of the inner elders of the Emerald Martial Palace snorted and waved his hand, cutting off the connection between the sword intent and those swords. Without the support of those swords, although the thick sword qi released by Yi Chen wasn't as powerful as before, it was still extremely sharp. Waves of white qi were formed behind the sword qi, which looked like rapidly changing clouds, pushing the sword qi forward. Crack! The sword qi clashed with the blade silhouette, and in the next moment, the blade silhouette was cut into two. The sword qi, which had shrunk to 1/3 of its original size, didn't lose any of its power, and fiercely struck on Qing Jun's protective purple crystal qi. A shocking amount of blood splattered out, and a sword wound appeared on Qing Jun's chest. It was so deep that it could reach his bones, and this was because the sword qi had changed direction midway and flew into the sky. Qing Jun's chest wound was only cut by the aftershock of the sword qi. Otherwise, he would not be alive. Puff! Qing Jun spat out a mouthful of blood. This mouthful of blood actually contained traces of sword qi, and it pierced through the ground. His face instantly turned pale and bloodless, and he was about to kneel on the ground. Suddenly, a figure landed beside Qing Jun and supported him. He was an inner elder of the Emerald Martial Palace. 4 moves, he defeated Qing Jun with 4 moves. That sword move just now has touched the edge of sword intent, right? Yes, I also felt a sharp, intense sweep through my heart. I thought it was just an illusion. I heard that once the sword intent is unleashed, it can sever the will of the void, making it impervious to all evils. What ability does this kid possess to actually touch sword insight first? Alas! Of course, most of them were jealous. At their age, it would be very difficult for them to improve their cultivation. They could only improve their combat strength in other aspects. Without a doubt, sword intent and saber intent were the dream of all of them. If these 2 things could be bought, they would buy them even if they had to spend all their wealth. They would do so at all costs. On the Sky Cloud Martial School's side, the head elder and the 4th elder let out a relieved smile. Yi Chen's outstanding performance was already a well-known fact, and they would definitely report it to their leader when they got back. Lu Hanshan shook his head, looked at Su Jing and said, "Amazing, now I finally understand what you mean. Perhaps he can lead us out of the Windy Nation and compete with those young geniuses from the South Zhuo region." Su Jing didn't answer, but instead, she asked, "You are also at the child level now, right?" Lu Hanshan didn't respond, but his eyes were shining brightly. The Emerald Martial Palace's inner elder, who was holding Qing Jun's arm, helped him to expel the sword qi from his body. Seeing that Qing Jun was severely wounded, he abruptly turned around, looked at Yi Chen and yelled harshly, "It's just a competition, but you attack so cruelly. Let me teach you a lesson." After saying that, he threw a slap towards Yi Chen. Bang! The air vibrated intensely, and Yi Chen was forced to step back. In front of him, the Sky Cloud Martial School's head elder appeared out of nowhere, smashed his opponent's palm attack with a single slap, and yelled, "Qing Yu, don't go too far. Yi Chen has already shown you mercy. Do you really think that you can bully our Sky Cloud Martial School's disciples?" "You." That Emerald Martial Palace's inner elder had a fierce look in his eyes. Qing Jun was his grandson, and he had always had high hopes for him. But today, not only was he defeated within 4 moves, he had also suffered a serious internal injury. He felt that his blood was rushing to his head, and he was about to lose his mind. Zhuang Qingxian threw a complicated glance at Yi Chen, then yelled at the Emerald Martial Palace's inner elder, "Haven't you lost enough face? Take Qing Jun to get his wounds treated." After the inner elder took Qing Jun away, Zhuang Qingxian took a deep breath and said, "This is just a competition. I hope you guys can control yourselves, don't force yourselves to fight." Just now, Yi Chen had indeed shown mercy to Qing Jun. Therefore, Zhuang Qingxian didn't dare to say anything, otherwise, he would leave an unfair impression on the crowd, which would damage his reputation. After that, the competition continued. However, all of the battles were between the young warriors from the other big powers. None of the truly powerful young warriors felt that it was not the right time yet. At this moment, Shurpatian was very unhappy. Just now, he had taken a glance at Ji Shuyan, and found that she had been staring at Yi Chen without even noticing him. This made him feel that he had been completely ignored. Although she had never been very interested in him before, at least she had maintained a certain amount of respect for him. In his eyes, their relationship was already quite good, and there was still some hope. However, right now, that little hope had been completely destroyed. Yi Chen, don't think too highly of yourself just because you've won against Qing Jun. The real child-level power is not something you can imagine. After a few more battles, I will let you know what the gap between us is and what despair is. I will destroy your half-step sword intent, and make you wish you were dead. Sure Potion's expression was still the same, but his mind was in turmoil. He had already come up with a plan, which was to completely shatter Yi Chen's confidence. A sword artist who had lost his confidence would probably lose his sword intent, not to mention that Yi Chen hadn't even comprehended the real sword intent yet. Sure Potion glanced at Yi Chen with an evil look in his eyes. Among the inner disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace, Yi Xian stared at Yi Chen, who was sitting on the chair. Just now, if it weren't for the inner elders, her sword would have been unsheathed by itself and merged with Yi Chen's sword aura. She couldn't understand how a man who used to be so useless could suddenly shine so brightly, and it was getting brighter and brighter, almost reaching the peak of the young generation in the Windy Nation. Sister Yi, he can only be arrogant for a short while. This time, Brother Sure will teach him a lesson. Cui Shiming, who was standing on the side, said casually. Yi Xian paused for a second. That's not going to be easy. You underestimate Brother Sure too much. Not to mention Yi Chen, even young Master North Snow and young Master Duanmu might not be able to win against Brother Sure. He has already reached the real child level power. He only needs the title of child. After saying these words, Cui Shiming felt very proud. He knew that once Sure Potion attacked, he would definitely make his opponent pay a great price. As for what the price would be, he didn't know. However, he knew that he had to work even harder in the future. Yi Xian was very talented, and her current power was almost the same as his. It was very likely that she would surpass him in the future, which made him feel a bit threatened. Yu would like to challenge the core disciple of the Rudra Martial School, Nangong Yun. As another round of sparring ended, from the North Snow Martial Academy, Blade Yu suddenly walked out and challenged Rain Man Nangong Yun. It's Blade Yu. Before Lynch grew up, he was recognized as the second most powerful warrior among the young generation in the North Snow Martial Academy. Yu's blade skills are extremely powerful. Although Lynch has caught up with him, he still might not be able to beat him. But Rain Man Nangong Yun is not bad either. I heard that he has received the teachings of the leader of the Rudra Martial School, and is training the Sky Holy Water spell. Sky Holy Water spell? Isn't it the early stage of the South Rudra Martial School's most powerful spell? Everyone was talking about it. Although the sparring between Yi Chen and Qing Jun was very interesting, it was not a child-level battle after all. Currently, other than young Master North Snow and young Master Duanmu, there were Sure Potion and Lu Wuxiang from the Emerald Martial Palace, Qin Yulian from the South Rudra Martial School, Zhu Mei from the Sky Cloud Martial School, Ouyang Lai from the Purple Sun Martial School, and Lynch from the North Snow Martial Academy. The others could only be considered as potential child-level warriors. Blade Yu and Rain Man Nangong Yun were one of them. Of course, although it was widely acknowledged, there were still some inaccuracies. Maybe the child-level warriors were not that powerful, and the potential child-level warriors were the real child-level warriors. Nangong Yun walked out with a smile on his face. Yu, I knew you would challenge me. The fight from half a year ago is not over yet. That's right. We have to find a winner in this fight. There are too many powerful warriors nowadays. If we don't work hard to break through, there will be no place for us. Yu was more than 2 meters tall, with a strong and sturdy waist. As he stood there, a powerful blade aura spread out in all directions. It was as if he had turned into a blade, a heavy and fast blade, ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. Nangong Yun said seriously, "If that's the case, then let's do it. I also hope to find a breakthrough from the pressure." Crazy Demon Blade. Yu was like a ferocious tiger. He took a step forward, and the distance of dozens of steps was completely ignored. His blade split the air open, and along with the illusory blade shadows, he hacked towards Nangong Yun. Chin. Nangong Yun waved her hand, and a wave of water-like Zhen Qi spread out. It turned into dozens of transparent sword lights in the air, flying towards the blade shadows. Seeing Nangong Yun's attack, Yi Chen was shocked. What a great skill! She has refined her Jin Qi to be like water, but heavier than water. Just like heavy water, one drop of Jin Qi would weigh hundreds of pounds, and dozens of drops would be almost impossible to block. Luo Hanshan, who was quite knowledgeable, explained to Yi Chen, the leader of the Rudra martial school has a very mysterious background, no one knows where she came from. She rose to power in a mysterious way, then founded one of the top 5 martial institutions, the Rudra martial school. The most powerful martial art of the Rudra martial school is called the Holy Water Spell. It is very magical. It is said that once you cultivate it to the extreme, a single drop of Jin Qi can weigh tens of thousands of pounds, and you can even control the rain and increase the amount of water in a certain area. This holy water spell is the early stage of the holy water spell. It should only have 1/5 of the power of the Rudra martial school, but it is still very powerful. Yi Chen nodded. He had heard about the leader of the Rudra martial school before. Although she was a woman, she was as ambitious as any man. She had built the Rudra martial school into one of the top 5 martial institutions. In terms of overall power, she was even slightly stronger than the Sky Cloud martial school. Of course, the Sky Cloud martial school was actually very powerful before. However, after being tricked by the Purple Sun martial school, they lost a lot of their powerful martial artists, and fell from rank 8 to rank 9. Even now, they were still trying to recover. Facing the powerful Jin Qi, Yu Yu was not afraid at all. He waved his heavy long blade, and the strong blade light made the water splash. 8 mountain-breaking movements. Suddenly, Yu Yu leapt up and threw out a normal-looking blade attack. Puff! Nangong Yun's Jin Qi was cut open layer by layer, and the cracks spread quickly. Some of the Jin Qi in the shape of water drops even fell on the ground, creating thousands of holes. Water curtain combined. Taking 3 steps back, Nangong Yun put her palms together and pushed forward. Walala! The rest of the Jin Qi turned into a water ball and clashed with Yu Yu's long blade, forcing Yu Yu to take dozens of steps back.